drop of blood slid down the knife blade and soaked into the cracked earth of New Mexico. Michael Riley stood motionless, staring at the unhealing cut on his palm, a reminder that he was still alive, though sometimes he doubted whether he should have returned from that sandy desert on the other side of the world at all. A sound like a child crying suddenly pulled him from his stupor. He froze, listening. There it was again, weak, desperate, coming from somewhere behind a rocky outcrop a couple hundred yards away. Instincts honed by two combat tours instantly awakened. Michael gripped the knife handle and moved forward. What he saw beyond the rocks made him freeze. 5 tiny bodies of newborn Mustangs sprawled on the scorching earth. Their bellies heaved heavily, and on their flanks, perfectly symmetrical symbols, resembling brands but far stranger. Not the marks of hot iron, but thin surgical lines applied with frightening precision. "What the hell?" Michael muttered, dropping to his knees beside the nearest foal. The smallest one, with an odd diamond-shaped pattern on its side, turned its head and looked Michael straight in the eyes. There was something more in that gaze than just the suffering of a dying animal. There was understanding. His phone rang. The screen displayed Sunny Day EQ. Tech. Michael had never heard of such a company, and he certainly hadn't given them his number. "Mr. Riley," a male voice said when he answered. Don't touch what you just found. Objects of our property. A team has already been dispatched for their disposal." Michael looked at the foal with the diamond mark. Its eyes hadn't left his. Without responding, he ended the call. The sun beat down mercilessly, the kind of heat that cooked the thoughts right out of your head. 6 months since he'd inherited this godforsaken ranch from an uncle he barely knew. 6 months of trying to outrun memories that followed him from Afghanistan, and now this. "Hang on, little ones," he whispered, pulling his canteen from his belt. One by one, he carefully moistened their cracked lips, watching as their tiny tongues desperately sought the water droplets. The diamond-marked foal responded most strongly, weakly pushing its muzzle against his hand, demanding more. Michael scanned their small bodies, noting that each bore a different mark. The diamond cross, a spiral, a lightning bolt, parallel lines, and what looked like a stylized letter O with a slash through it. All were precise and uniform in their execution. Nothing like traditional branding. His satellite phone, the one he kept for emergencies, buzzed with a text message. "Riley, don't interfere. Final warning." The sound of an approaching vehicle reached him across the open terrain, still miles away but closing fast. Michael made his decision in an instant. He pulled the tarp from his pack, one he'd intended to use for collecting wild herbs that his ranch hand Luis had asked for. Working quickly, he gathered each foal, wrapping them together in the protective covering, then carefully loaded them into the back of his truck. The engine roared to life just as a black SUV appeared on the horizon, dust billowing behind it like an angry spirit. "Not today," Michael muttered, slamming the accelerator and cutting across the desert in the opposite direction. The veterinary clinic in Santa Fe Springs was little more than a weathered building at the edge of town, but its faded sign, Mendez Veterinary Services, gave Michael a flicker of hope. He'd met Dr. Sarah Mendez only once when she'd come to look at a sick mare shortly after he'd arrived at the ranch. She'd impressed him with her straightforward manner and obvious expertise. He pulled around to the back entrance, the tires of his truck kicking up gravel. The foals had barely moved during the 30-minute drive, their condition deteriorating with each passing mile. Sarah emerged through the back door, wiping her hands on a towel. Her dark hair was pinned back in a practical bun, her expression shifting from mild annoyance to concern as she registered the urgency in Michael's face. "Dr. Mendez," he called, already moving to the truck bed. "I need help." "What have you got?" she asked, approaching quickly. Michael pulled back the tarp. "Found them abandoned in the desert." Sarah's sharp intake of breath told him everything. "Get them inside, now." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of activity. Sarah and her assistant Lupita worked methodically, setting up IV drips for rehydration, checking vital signs, drawing blood samples, all while Michael hovered nearby, feeling both out of place and unwilling to leave. "These marks," Sarah said finally, examining the diamond symbol on the smallest foal, "they're not typical brands. They're laser-etched. Precision work." "Who would do that?" Michael asked, holding the foal's head still, while Lupita administered antibiotics. "I don't know," Sarah frowned, "but these foals are purebred Mustangs. Based on their age and condition, they were deliberately abandoned." Michael felt anger rising within him, the same anger he'd worked so hard to control since returning from his last tour. "Why? They're just babies." Sarah gave him a long look. They're special, Mike. Look at their build, elegant legs, compact body, broad chest. These aren't ordinary wild Mustangs. There's something, I don't know, refined about them. But if they're valuable, why abandon them? Sarah shook her head. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I have a contact at New Mexico University who specializes in equine genetics. I'll take DNA samples. Michael nodded, watching the small bodies connected to IV tubes. Something about these foals awakened a feeling he hadn't experienced in a very long time, a desire to protect. Will they survive? He asked quietly. Sarah put a hand on his shoulder. I don't know, Mike. They're severely dehydrated and malnourished. But we'll do everything possible. Michael returned to the clinic the next morning after a sleepless night. He had spent his time researching on his ancient laptop, trying to find information about Sunny Day Equestrian Technologies, the company name that had appeared on his phone. What he discovered was troubling. Sunny Day was the largest producer of thoroughbred horses in the state, with headquarters just 30 miles from his ranch. They had recently announced a new program called Desert Revival, supposedly aimed at preserving the gene pool of wild horses. When he entered the clinic, Sarah was sitting at the computer, her face tense. How are they? Michael asked. 2 of the weakest are still in critical condition. The other 3 are showing signs of improvement. She turned the computer screen toward him. But that's not all. I sent photos of their marks to my contact at Sunny Day Research Institute. He says he's seen something similar before. Michael leaned in, examining enlarged images of the symbols on the foal's flanks. What does it mean? They're genetic markers, Sarah replied. Each symbol designates a specific set of genes or mutation. It's like a sorting system. Sorting? For what? Sarah stood and led him to the back room where the foals were resting. Their tiny bodies were covered with blankets, and next to each stood a monitor tracking vital signs. For breeding, she said quietly. Or in this case, for culling. Michael felt a chill run down his spine. You mean? Yes. These foals were rejected from a breeding program. They were left to die because their genetic characteristics didn't meet required standards. Michael slowly approached the smallest foal, the one marked with the cross in a diamond. The foal watched him with large dark eyes that, despite its weakness, held something untamed. Who would do such a thing? He asked, gently stroking the foal's delicate neck. Sarah went to the computer in the corner of the room and opened a web page. I think I have a theory. Do you know about Sunny Day Equestrian Technologies? Michael nodded. I just researched them. Their Desert Revival program. Exactly. Their headquarters is just 30 miles from here. And she pointed at the screen. Their logo is a stylized horse head inside a diamond. On the screen was a glossy website with photos of magnificent horses and the company logo, strikingly similar to the mark on the smallest foal's flank. Michael felt his breath catch. You think it's them? I'm not sure. But I'm going to find out, Sarah replied. I have a friend who works in their lab. I'll try to learn what's happening. Michael looked at the foals again. Now that they were cleaned of dirt and dust, he could see them better. Despite their exhaustion, signs of exceptional animals were indeed visible. Elegant physique, noble headline, intelligent gaze. What will happen to them now? He asked. Sarah sighed. If they survive, I don't know. They can't just be released back into the wild. They're too small. Michael stroked the small head of the diamond-marked foal. The animal softly snorted, trying to reach for his hand. I'll take them, he said suddenly. What? Sarah looked surprised. Mike, that's a huge responsibility. They need special care, feeding every few hours. I have the space, Michael interrupted her. And time. And I think we need each other. Sarah looked at him for a long time, then slowly nodded. Okay, but you'll need help. And if we're really dealing with Sunny Day, this could be dangerous. Michael looked at the 5 foals. Discarded, marked, condemned to death only because they didn't conform to someone's idea of perfection. Something in their fate resonated deeply within him. I'm not afraid of danger, Sarah, he said, his voice hardening. I'm afraid of not doing what needs to be done. The black SUV was waiting by the ranch gate when Michael returned home. 2 men in dark suits and a woman with sharp features stood beside it. Michael recognized the vehicle immediately, the same one he'd seen approaching in the desert. Mr. Riley, the woman called as he stepped out of his truck. Diane Wells, Sunny Day Equestrian Technologies. We need to discuss what you found yesterday. Michael's muscles tensed, but he kept his expression neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. The 5 Mustang foals you took to the Mendez Veterinary Clinic. Wells said, her professional smile never reaching her eyes. They're part of our proprietary research program. Strange, Michael replied coolly. I found them abandoned on my land, left to die in the sun. There was a misunderstanding. Those animals were scheduled for transport to another research facility. We're very grateful you found them, and we're prepared to compensate you for any expenses. Now we'd like to reclaim our property. Michael felt the familiar combat readiness surging through his body. Something wasn't right, and every instinct warned him of danger. Do you have documentation proving ownership of these foals? Wells frowned slightly. Mr. Riley, Sunnyday Equestrian Technologies is a respected company with an impeccable reputation. I assure you these animals are our property. Then you won't have any trouble providing the appropriate documentation, Michael countered. Until then, the foals are under veterinary observation and can't be moved without the attending vet's approval. Wells took a small step forward, her voice becoming quieter and harder. Mr. Riley, I don't think you understand the situation. These animals are the result of multi-million-dollar investments and years of research. They represent significant intellectual property of our company. And I don't think you understand the situation, Ms. Well, Michael replied, standing to his full height. I found 5 dying foals abandoned to the elements. If they truly belong to your company, I have many questions about your methods. One of the men in suits stepped forward, but Wells stopped him with a gesture. Very well, Mr. Riley. I see we started on the wrong foot. Perhaps you should discuss this with our director. Mr. Sunnyday would be happy to meet with you personally and explain the situation. Michael shook his head. Documentation first, Miss. Wells, until then, the foals stay where they are. Wells looked at him for several seconds, then nodded. Of course, we'll provide all necessary documentation. In the meantime, think about your decision, Mr. Riley. Sunnyday Equestrian Technologies can be a very generous friend or a very serious adversary. She handed him a business card. Call when you're ready for a reasonable conversation. As the black SUV disappeared in a cloud of dust, Michael pulled out his phone and called Sarah. They came, he said without preamble. Sunnyday, demanding the foals back. They move fast, Sarah replied. Listen, I've learned more. These marks on the foals, they're definitely part of Sunnyday's genetic cataloging system. Each symbol represents specific genetic traits they're manipulating. Manipulating how? I don't know exactly, but my friend says there are rumors. Experimental genetic modifications. They're trying to create horses with enhanced traits, speed, endurance, intelligence. Michael looked toward the horizon where the SUV had disappeared. And our little ones, byproducts, maybe they showed undesirable traits or failed to meet expectations. So they just left them to die, Michael said, his voice hardening. And now they want them back. Mike, be careful. Sunnyday has powerful connections. Government contracts, political influence. Michael thought of the smallest foal with the diamond mark, how its eyes had locked with his in the desert. He'd seen something there, something that resonated with his own broken spirit. I'm bringing them to the ranch tomorrow, he said. The 3 strongest ones. Can you help me get ready? There was a pause on the line. Are you sure about this? Michael watched the sun setting over the rugged landscape of his inherited property. For 6 months, he'd been drifting, existing rather than living, haunted by memories of war and loss. Now, for the first time since returning home, he felt purpose stirring within him. I've never been more sure of anything, he answered. As night fell across the desert, Michael began preparations. Whatever Sunnyday wanted with these foals, they had abandoned them to die. That made them his responsibility now. And if there was one thing Michael Riley knew how to do, it was protect what was his. The war might have broken something inside him, but these 5 marked foals had awakened something he thought long dead. Hope. And he would fight for that with everything he had left. The dawn light crept across the ranch, painting the weathered buildings in shades of gold. Michael stood in the doorway of the old stable, now transformed into a makeshift nursery for the 3 strongest foals. He'd worked through the night, installing heat lamps, laying fresh straw, and preparing everything according to Sarah's instructions. Luis Alvarez, his only ranch hand, approached with a thermos of coffee. In his 60s, with sun-weathered skin and calloused hands, Luis had come with the property, a living encyclopedia of the ranch and its surroundings. You look like death warmed over, Jefe, Luis said, handing him the thermos. Michael accepted the coffee with a grateful nod. Didn't sleep. These horses, they're special to you, Luis asked, peering into the stable. They need help, Michael replied simply, taking a long sip of the strong brew. Luis studied him with knowing eyes. Sometimes helping others is how we help ourselves, no? Before Michael could respond, the sound of an approaching vehicle made them both turn. Sarah's veterinary truck was coming up the dirt road, dust billowing behind it. "She's here," Michael said, straightening up. "Let's get ready." Sarah had brought specialized equipment and supplies, formula milk replacer, feeding bottles, medications, and monitoring devices. With her was Lupita, her young assistant, carrying an insulated container. "How are the other two?" Michael asked as they carefully unloaded the supplies. "Still critical," Sarah replied, her face showing the strain of a sleepless night. But fighting, especially the little one with the diamond mark." "Phoenix," Michael said quietly. Sarah looked at him questioningly. "That's what I'm calling him. The smallest one." "Phoenix." A hint of a smile touched Sarah's tired face. "Already naming them?" Michael shrugged, feeling slightly embarrassed. "They need names. And the others?" "The one with the lightning bolt is Storm. The spiral is Vortex. The parallel lines is Echo. And the one with the circle and slash is Nova." Sarah's smile widened slightly. "Poetic for a Marine." "I read books too, Doc." Their light moment was interrupted by the sound of the stable door opening. Luis appeared, his expression grave. "Jefe, we have company." Michael stepped outside to see a caravan of vehicles approaching. 3 black SUVs and a large truck with the Sunny Day logo emblazoned on its side. "They don't give up easily," he muttered. Sarah came to stand beside him. "What's the plan?" Michael turned to Luis. "Get the foals into the back barn. Use the old cattle tunnel. Stay with them." Luis nodded and hurried back to the stable. "Sarah, you and Lupita should leave. This could get complicated." Sarah folded her arms across her chest. "Not a chance. Those foals are my patients." Michael recognized the stubborn set of her jaw and nodded. "Then stay behind me." The vehicles pulled up in a neat formation, and Michael counted 8 people emerging, 6 men in tactical clothing that suggested private security and 2 in business attire. One was Diane Wells from yesterday. The other was an imposing man in his 60s, tall and lean with silver hair and penetrating blue eyes. "Mr. Riley," Wells called out. "Thank you for meeting with us. This is Alexander Sunnyday, CEO of Sunnyday Equestrian Technologies." Michael advanced to meet them, consciously positioning himself between the newcomers and the stable. "Didn't realize I had a choice about meeting with you. Seems more like an invasion." Alexander Sunnyday stepped forward, offering his hand. Michael didn't take it. "Mr. Riley," Sunnyday said, lowering his hand smoothly as if the snub hadn't occurred. "I understand there's been a misunderstanding. Ms. Wells tells me you found some foals that are part of our research program." "I found 5 abandoned animals dying in the sun," Michael replied, "with strange marks laser-etched into their hides. Is that standard practice in your research?" Sunnyday's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes hardened. "Our methods are proprietary, Mr. Riley, but I can assure you we value our research subjects highly. What happened was an unfortunate error. A transportation team was supposed to move those specimens to a specialized facility, but there was a miscommunication." "Specimens," Michael repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "Those specimens are living creatures that were left to die. Which is why we're grateful you found them," Sunnyday continued smoothly. "We've brought a specialized transport unit and veterinary team to take them to our state-of-the-art facility." "I don't see any documentation proving ownership," Michael countered. Sunnyday signaled to Wells, who produced a folder from her briefcase and held it out to Michael. "Registration papers for our Desert Revival breeding program. DNA profiles matching the foals. Transportation manifests. Everything is in order." Michael took the folder but didn't open it. "Dr. Mendez will need to verify these." Sarah stepped forward, taking the folder. She began examining the papers with a critical eye. "These DNA markers," she said slowly, "they don't match the standard equine genetic profiles." "As I said, our program is cutting edge," Sunnyday replied. "We're developing enhanced bloodlines that combine the best traits of wild Mustangs with selected performance characteristics." "You mean you're genetically modifying them?" Sarah challenged. "We prefer advanced selective breeding," Sunnyday corrected with a thin smile. "Now, if you'll just point us to our property, we can be on our way." "These papers show test subjects," Sarah said, closing the folder. "Not individual identification for these specific foals. There's no proof these exact animals belong to you." Sunnyday's pleasant expression faltered for an instant before recovering. "Dr. Mendez, is it? The genetic markers on the foal's flanks are proprietary Sunnyday identification. That alone establishes ownership. Actually, Michael interjected, those marks might prove something very different. If you did abandon those foals intentionally, that would constitute animal cruelty under New Mexico law, a criminal offense. One of the security men took a step forward, but Sunnyday held up a hand to stop him. "Where am Mr. Riley?" he said, his voice taking on a steely edge. "You seem like an intelligent man. A veteran, I understand. You've served your country honorably. I respect that." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "But you need to understand what you're involving yourself in. Sunnyday Technologies has contracts with the Department of Defense, partnerships with universities, and the backing of very influential people. This is bigger than a few unwanted foals." "Unwanted?" Michael caught the slip. "I thought it was a transportation error." Sunnyday's eyes narrowed slightly. "A poor choice of words. The point is, these animals represent millions in research investment and are crucial to national interests. We're prepared to compensate you generously, say $50,000 for your trouble. But we will be leaving with our property today." "No," Michael said simply. "You won't." The atmosphere shifted palpably, tension crackling in the air. The security personnel spread out slightly, hands moving closer to their waists. Michael noticed at least 3 were armed, despite attempting to conceal their weapons. "This is unnecessary," Sunnyday said quietly. "Don't force my hand, Mr. Riley." "Are you threatening me on my own property?" Michael asked, his combat-honed senses registering multiple potential threats and escape routes. "Not at all," Sunnyday smiled coldly. "Just clarifying the situation." The standoff was interrupted by the sound of an approaching vehicle, a sheriff's department SUV coming up the drive. Relief washed over Michael. He'd called Sheriff Martinez last night, an old friend of his uncle's, explaining the situation. The sheriff, a heavy-set man in his 50s with a salt and pepper mustache, stepped out and approached the group. "Morning, folks," he said casually, though his eyes were sharp as they scanned the situation. "Got a call about some potential trouble out here." "No trouble at all, Sheriff," Sunnyday said smoothly. "Just a business matter between Mr. Riley and my company." "Involving armed men on private property?" the sheriff asked, nodding toward one of the security guards whose jacket had fallen open, revealing a holstered pistol. "Security detail," Sunnyday explained. "Standard procedure when transporting valuable assets." Sheriff Martinez turned to Michael. "Want to tell me what's happening here, Riley?" Michael explained the situation briefly, finding the abandoned foals, the strange marks, and Sunnyday's demands. The sheriff nodded thoughtfully, then turned to Sunnyday. "Sir, do you have a warrant to remove property from this ranch?" "We don't need a warrant for our own property," Wells interjected. "Actually, ma'am, you do," the sheriff corrected. "If Mr. Riley disputes ownership and the property is currently in his possession, you need a court order to remove it. That's the law in New Mexico." Sunnyday's pleasant mask slipped. "This is absurd. Those animals are clearly identifiable as Sunnyday research subjects." "Then it should be easy to get a judge to agree," Sheriff Martinez replied evenly. "Until then, I suggest you leave Mr. Riley's property before I start checking permits for those concealed weapons." For a moment, it seemed Sunnyday might argue further, but then he nodded curtly. "Very well. We'll return with the proper documentation." He fixed his cold gaze on Michael. "Soon." As they drove away, the sheriff turned to Michael. "You've stirred up a hornet's nest, son. Sunnyday has half the state politicians in his pocket." "Thank you for coming, Sheriff." Martinez shook his head. "Don't thank me yet. They'll be back, probably with a judge's order. Whatever they want, they usually get." After the sheriff left, Sarah approached Michael, her expression troubled. "Their paperwork was strange, Mike. Technical terms, genetic codes I've never seen before. Whatever they're doing with these horses, it's not normal breeding." Michael nodded grimly. "We need to move fast. How soon can the foals be transported safely?" "Transport them." "Where?" "Somewhere Sunnyday can't find them." "I have a place in mind." Sarah shook her head. "The 3 here are stable enough, but the 2 at the clinic are still critical. Moving them could kill them." Michael ran a hand through his hair, thinking rapidly. "Then we split them up. Luis and I will take these 3 to a secure location. You keep the others at the clinic, but move them to the back room and tell everyone they didn't make it. Lie about their condition? Just until we figure out what's really going on here." "Something isn't right, Sarah. The way Sunnyday reacted, the armed guards, the urgency, these aren't just expensive horses. There's something more." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "I have a friend at the university who specializes in genetic research. I'll send her the blood samples and see if she can make sense of their DNA." "Do it. And don't use your regular phone or email." Sunny Day seems to have resources. Luis emerged from the barn, his expression grave. Jefe, the little one, Phoenix, he's having trouble breathing. They rushed inside to find the smallest foal struggling, his tiny body heaving with the effort to draw breath. Respiratory distress, Sarah said, quickly examining him. His lungs might be compromised from the dehydration. She pulled equipment from her bag, working quickly to set up an oxygen supplement. Stay with me, little one, she murmured, attaching a small mask to the foal's muzzle. Michael knelt beside them, instinctively placing a calming hand on Phoenix's flank. The moment he touched the diamond-marked skin, the foal's eyes locked with his, and remarkably, his breathing began to steady. That's it, Michael encouraged softly. Fight! Keep your hand there, Sarah said, noticing the effect. It's helping. For several tense minutes, they stayed like that, Sarah monitoring vital signs while Michael maintained contact, speaking in low, soothing tones. His oxygen levels are improving, Sarah finally announced. I think we're past the crisis. Michael nodded but didn't remove his hand. I'm not leaving him. Sarah studied him with a thoughtful expression. There's something special between you two. I know how it feels to be left for dead, Michael said quietly. To struggle for each breath and wonder if it's worth the fight. His words hung in the air, the first real glimpse into his military experience that he'd shared with anyone since returning to civilian life. Sarah touched his shoulder gently. I'll check the other two. Then we need to make plans. Left alone with Phoenix, Michael continued to stroke the foal's warm flank, tracing the strange diamond pattern etched there. What makes you so special, little one? He whispered. What secret are you carrying? As if in response, Phoenix turned his head toward the fresh straw where the other two foals rested. For a moment, Michael thought he saw a faint bluish glow emanating from the marks on all three animals, a subtle luminescence that pulsed once, then faded. He blinked, wondering if exhaustion was making him hallucinate, but something told him he hadn't imagined it, and that discovery had just raised the stakes significantly. 3 days later, Michael drove his truck down an old logging road deep in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. In the specially outfitted bed of the pickup, the three foals rested in a makeshift transport unit built by Luis. They had improved enough for the journey, though Phoenix still required supplemental oxygen at times. Luis followed in a second vehicle carrying supplies. They had left the ranch at dawn, taking a circuitous route to shake any potential followers. Their destination was an old hunting cabin that had belonged to Michael's uncle, so remote it didn't appear on any maps. A perfect hiding place until they could figure out their next move. Almost there, little ones, Michael said, checking the rearview mirror for the 100th time. No vehicles had followed them into the mountains, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. His satellite phone buzzed, the secure line Sarah was using to communicate. Riley, he answered. It's me, Sarah's voice came through, tense and hurried. They came back, with federal agents this time, claiming the foals are part of a classified government program. Michael's grip tightened on the steering wheel. What about the two at your clinic? Hidden, but they searched everything. I told them all 5 foals had died. Did they believe you? I don't think so. They took samples, records, everything. Mike, one of the agents mentioned Project Pegasus. Does that mean anything to you? No, but I'll look into it. There's more, Sarah continued, her voice dropping lower. My friend at the university analyzed the blood samples. The DNA, it's not normal, Mike. There are sequences she's never seen before in any equine genome. She said the closest match was... This sounds crazy. What? Michael prompted. Human DNA. There are fragments that more closely resemble human genetic markers than horse. The truck nearly swerved off the road as Michael processed this. That's impossible. I know, but she's the best geneticist in the state. She said she'd need more advanced equipment to be sure, but her preliminary finding is that these foals have been genetically modified with non-equine DNA. Potentially human. Michael looked in the rearview mirror at the 3 foals. Phoenix was awake, his intelligent eyes seeming to watch the passing scenery with interest. Now we know why Sunny Day is so desperate to get them back, he said grimly. What are you going to do? Stick to the plan. Get them somewhere safe. Then find out what the hell Project Pegasus is. Be careful, Mike. If this involves classified government research, I still have contacts from my service days. I'll call in some favors. Keep me updated on the secure line. I'll do the same. After ending the call, Michael drove in silence, his mind racing with implications. Genetic modification combining horse and human DNA? It sounded like science fiction, yet it would explain Sunny Day's extreme reaction, the government involvement, everything. As the truck rounded the final bend, the hunting cabin came into view, a sturdy log structure nestled among tall pines with a small corral behind it. Luis pulled up beside him, nodding in approval. Good defensive position, Jefe. Clear sightlines, single approach road. Old habits, Michael replied. They had both evaluated the location with military precision. Luis had served in the Mexican army before immigrating to the U.S. decades ago. They worked quickly to unload the foals and equipment, settling the animals in the corral which had been partially enclosed to provide shelter. As darkness fell, Michael sat on the cabin porch, rifle across his knees, watching Phoenix and the others adjusting to their new surroundings. The foals seemed stronger already, exploring their enclosure with growing curiosity. Luis emerged from the cabin with 2 cups of coffee. Mystery horses with government secrets, he said, handing Michael a cup. You certainly know how to break a routine, Jefe. Michael smiled faintly. Not what I expected when I inherited a rundown ranch. Your uncle would approve, Luis said, settling into a chair beside him. William was always fighting for the underdog, or in this case, the underhorse. They sat in companionable silence, watching the stars emerge above the mountains. What do you think they really are? Luis finally asked, nodding toward the foals. Michael took a long sip of coffee before answering. I don't know, but whatever Sunny Day did to them, whatever they were trying to create, I think it worked, just not the way they expected. And now they want to erase their mistakes, Luis said grimly. Not while I'm breathing, Michael replied. Later that night, after Luis had turned in, Michael made his way to the corral. The foals were sleeping, huddled together for warmth, despite the heat lamp they'd installed. Phoenix raised his head as Michael approached, those intelligent eyes reflecting the moonlight. What are you? Michael whispered. What did they do to you? As if in answer, the strange mark on Phoenix's flank began to glow with that same ethereal blue light Michael had glimpsed before. This time there was no mistaking it, a pulsing luminescence that spread to the marks on Storm and Vortex as well. And then, even more incredibly, he heard it, not with his ears, but somehow inside his mind, a voice faint but distinct. Help us. Michael staggered backward, nearly falling over the corral fence. Had he imagined it? Sleep deprivation playing tricks on his exhausted mind? But Phoenix was still watching him, the blue glow pulsing in rhythm with the foal's heartbeat, those eyes far too knowing for a newborn animal. Real. You heard us. First contact. This time there was no denying it. The words formed in his consciousness with perfect clarity, accompanied by a sense of desperate urgency that wasn't his own. My God, Michael whispered, frozen in place as the implications crashed over him like a wave. The marks glowed brighter, and the sensation of another presence in his mind intensified. Not invasive, but tentative, like a child reaching out to touch a stranger's hand. Help. Danger. Others in pain. Then as suddenly as it had begun, the glow faded and the presence withdrew, leaving Michael alone with his racing thoughts and a truth too fantastic to comprehend. The foals weren't just genetically modified horses, they were something entirely new. Michael didn't sleep that night. How could he, with what he'd experienced? He sat on the cabin porch until dawn, rifle across his knees, mind reeling between rational explanations and the impossible truth that seemed to be staring him in the face. The foals, at least Phoenix, had communicated with him telepathically. As the first light of morning touched the mountains, Louis emerged from the cabin with a thermos. You look like you've seen a ghost, Jefe, he said, pouring steaming coffee into a mug and handing it to Michael. Michael accepted it gratefully, the warmth seeping into his cold hands. Not a ghost, he replied after a long moment. Something else. Louis settled into the chair beside him, waiting patiently. Michael had come to appreciate this about the older man, his ability to sit with silence, to give space for difficult words to form. What do you know about telepathy, Luis? Michael finally asked. If Luis was surprised by the question, he didn't show it. My grandmother was a curandera in Oaxaca. She believed some people could speak without words, that thoughts could bridge the space between minds. And do you believe that? Luis studied the mountain horizon, his weathered face thoughtful. I believe there are more things between heaven and earth than we understand. Why do you ask? Michael took a deep breath. Because last night, I think Phoenix spoke to me. In my mind, he braced himself for skepticism, even mockery, but Luis merely nodded. The small one with the diamond mark. I thought there was something special about his eyes. You're not surprised? Luis smiled faintly. My friend, when a powerful corporation with government connections hunts 5 baby horses like they are nuclear secrets, I am prepared for many strange possibilities. Relief washed over Michael. He wasn't alone in this madness. He said, "Help us," and others in pain. I think he was referring to the two foals still at Sarah's clinic. "Then we must help them all," Luis said simply, as if rescuing telepathic foals from a powerful corporation backed by the government was just another day's work. Michael nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. "I need to contact Sarah, see how the other two are doing. And I need to find out what Project Pegasus is." "The flying horse from Greek myths," Luis noted. "Fitting name if they are creating, what? Horse-human hybrids?" The term sent a chill down Michael's spine, making the impossible seem concrete. "I'm not sure what they are, but they need our help. Whatever Sunnyday did to them wasn't their choice." Luis's expression hardened. "No child asked to be born, Jefe. But every child deserves protection." Michael looked at him sharply. So child? You think of them as children? If they have human DNA, human thoughts, what would you call them?" The question hung in the air between them, profound in its implications. Before Michael could form an answer, his satellite phone buzzed. "Riley," he answered. "It's me," Sarah's voice came through, tense and urgent. "We have a problem. Echo is getting worse, the one with parallel lines. His temperature is spiking, and he's not responding to antibiotics." "What about Nova?" Michael asked, referring to the foal with the circle/mark. "Stable but weak. Mike and I don't know how to treat Echo. His physiology isn't responding like a normal horse. The medications that should work aren't having any effect." Michael exchanged a glance with Luis. "Sarah, there's something you need to know about these foals. It's going to sound crazy. After what I've seen in their blood work, try me. I think they're telepathic. Phoenix communicated with me last night." There was a long pause. "You're sure? Positive?" "Their marks glowed blue and I heard words in my mind. Clear as day." Another pause, then, "That actually makes a disturbing kind of sense." The brain tissue samples showed abnormal development in the hippocampus and frontal lobe, areas involved in human cognition and communication. They're worried about the others, about Echo and Nova. "Is there any way you can bring them here?" "Mike, Echo is on life support. Moving him would kill him." Michael ran a hand through his hair, thinking rapidly. "Then I need to come to you. That's too dangerous. Sunnyday has people watching the clinic." "I'm sure of it. We need to try something else then. A different approach to treatment." Michael hesitated, then voiced the thought that had been forming since the telepathic connection. What if Phoenix could help somehow?" "What do you mean?" "I don't know exactly, but there's a connection between them. Through those marks. If Phoenix could communicate with Echo..." "You're suggesting remote telepathic diagnosis?" Sarah sounded incredulous. "I know how it sounds, but we're dealing with something unprecedented here. Normal veterinary medicine isn't working." There was a long silence as Sarah considered this. "Let me try something else first. I have a colleague at UNM Medical School, someone I trust. I'll get her to look at Echo's samples without telling her where they came from. Okay? But if his condition worsens, I'll call you immediately. In the meantime, be careful. The federal agents were asking a lot of questions about you specifically. They knew your military background. Not surprising. I need to learn more about Project Pegasus. Do you still have that journalist friend at the Albuquerque Journal? Emma? Yes, but she mostly covers local politics. She might have contacts who can help. Someone who specializes in government contracts, black projects. I'll call her. What should I tell her? As little as possible for now. Just that you're looking into a classified project that might involve Sunnyday Equestrian Technologies and the Department of Defense. After ending the call, Michael turned to Luis. "I need to check on the foals." They made their way to the corral where the 3 young Mustangs were awake and alert. Storm and Vortex were exploring their enclosure, surprisingly steady on their legs for animals so young. Phoenix, still the smallest, stood watching Michael intently as he approached. "Good morning, little one," Michael said softly, extending his hand palm up. Phoenix approached without hesitation, sniffing Michael's fingers before gently butting his head against the outstretched hand. The gesture was so dog-like, so deliberate in its affection, that Michael felt a lump form in his throat. "Your friend is sick," he said, not feeling foolish at all for speaking directly to the foal. "Echo needs help." Phoenix's ears pricked forward at the name, his dark eyes fixed on Michael with an intensity that felt distinctly non-animal. There was no immediate telepathic response, but Michael sensed a shift in the foal's awareness, a focusing of attention that seemed purposeful. "I think he understood you," Luis said quietly from beside him. "I think so too." Michael crouched down to be at eye level with Phoenix. We want to help all of you, but we need to understand what you are, what Project Pegasus is. Phoenix stomped a front hoof once, then twice, his eyes never leaving Michael's. Was it frustration at the limitations of communication? Or something else? Maybe he's trying to tell us something, Luis suggested. Michael remained still, focusing on the connection he had felt the night before, trying to open his mind to receive rather than transmit thoughts. For a moment, there was nothing. Then faintly, like a radio signal coming in and out of tune. Danger. Others. Coming. Michael tensed. Did you hear that? Luis shook his head. Hear what? He said danger. Others. Coming. I think he's warning us. The words had barely left his mouth when the distant sound of helicopter rotors echoed across the mountains. Luis's expression turned grim. How could they have found us so quickly? Doesn't matter. We need to move. Michael's military training kicked in, mind racing through escape protocols. Get the truck ready. I'll prep the foals for transport. As Luis rushed to the vehicles, Michael quickly gathered their essential supplies. The helicopter's sound grew louder, approaching from the south. They must have tracked my satellite phone, Michael muttered, cursing his oversight. He smashed the device against a rock, then hurriedly led the foals from their enclosure to the prepared transport in his truck bed. Phoenix went willingly, but Storm and Vortex balked, sensing the tension and danger. Please, Michael urged, we have to go now. To his amazement, Phoenix turned to the other two and made a soft, nickering sound. Immediately, both foals settled and followed him into the truck. Luis returned, shotgun in hand. Ready to move. But they'll spot the trucks from the air. Michael nodded toward the dense forest to the north. We'll use the old logging road through the canyon. The tree cover should hide us. The helicopter was visible now, a black speck against the morning sky, still miles away but closing fast. They drove in tense silence, the trucks lurching over the rough terrain as they descended into the canyon. The thick pine canopy soon enveloped them, providing cover from aerial observation. Where are we going? Luis asked as they navigated the treacherous road. I have a contact near Taos, Michael replied, eyes fixed on the hazardous path ahead. Former Special Forces, off the grid. If anyone can help us, it's him. The logging road eventually connected with a more established Forest Service route, allowing them to make better time. Michael constantly checked his mirrors, alert for any sign of pursuit. Who do you think they sent? Luis asked after several miles. Probably Homeland Security. If Project Pegasus involves classified genetic research, it would fall under their jurisdiction for national security. And us? What are we now? Terrorists? Michael's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Asset recovery specialists, he said grimly. 4 hours later, they pulled up to a remote compound surrounded by a high chain-link fence topped with razor wire. Security cameras monitored the entrance, and Michael spotted at least 2 concealed observation posts in the surrounding woods. Your friend lives like he's expecting World War III, Luis commented. Hector has his reasons, Michael replied, stopping at the gate and flashing his headlights in a specific pattern. 3 short, 2 long, 1 short. A moment later, the gate began to slide open automatically. No questions asked? Luis raised an eyebrow. Oh, there'll be questions. Plenty of them. They drove up a winding driveway to a sprawling ranch house with several outbuildings. A tall man with close-cropped gray hair and the bearing of a career soldier stepped onto the porch, a modified AR-15 held casually but competently in his hands. Riley, he called as Michael exited the truck. Been a while. Good to see you, Hector, Michael replied. Thanks for the welcome. Hector Ramirez had been Michael's commanding officer during his first tour in Afghanistan. After 20 years in Special Forces, Hector had retired to this isolated compound, preferring solitude to civilian life. You brought company, Hector observed, nodding toward Luis and then the truck bed with its precious cargo. We need sanctuary. Just for a day or two. Hector's expression remained neutral. You in trouble. The kind that comes with black helicopters. That earned a raised eyebrow. Interesting. Drive around back to the barn. We'll get your horses settled first. Inside the spacious, modern barn, they unloaded the foals into stalls with fresh straw and water. Hector watched with curious detachment as Phoenix followed Michael like a puppy, never straying more than a few feet from him. Unusual attachment for a Mustang foal, Hector commented. These aren't usual Mustangs, Michael replied. That's what the trouble is about. Once the foals were settled, Hector led them to the main house, a surprisingly comfortable space with modern amenities despite its isolated location. So, Hector said, setting 3 glasses of whiskey on the kitchen table. Tell me why Homeland Security is hunting my former lieutenant and his… What? Magic horses? Michael exchanged a glance with Luis, then began the story, finding the abandoned foals, the confrontation with Sunnyday, the strange genetic markers, and finally the telepathic communication. Hector listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. When Michael finished, he took a thoughtful sip of whiskey. Project Pegasus, he said slowly. I've heard whispers. Black budget stuff, compartmentalized even within DoD. Michael leaned forward. What do you know? Not much. Just rumors among the special operations community. Something about enhanced battlefield perception, remote communication capabilities that couldn't be intercepted or jammed. Started about 5 years ago. And the connection to horses? Hector shrugged. Never knew there was one, but it makes a certain twisted sense. Horses have been military assets for thousands of years. They can navigate terrain vehicles can't, operate without fuel, and form bonds with their riders that technology can't replicate. So they're creating telepathic war horses? Luis asked, incredulous. Or trying to, Hector replied. Question is, why did they abandon those 5? What made them different from what Sunnyday wanted? Michael thought of Phoenix's intelligent eyes, the careful way he'd communicated. Maybe they were too successful, too independent. Or not controllable enough, Hector suggested darkly. A weapon that thinks for itself is a military nightmare. The satellite phone Hector had provided buzzed, interrupting their speculation. Michael answered, putting it on speaker. It's Sarah. Echo had a seizure. I had to bring in my colleague from UNM. She's in shock. She's never seen anything like Echo's neurological readings. Is he going to survive? Michael asked. We've stabilized him for now, but his system is fighting itself. The hybrid DNA is causing autoimmune reactions. His body is attacking itself. Michael looked toward the barn where Phoenix and the others were resting. Could you get DNA samples from Phoenix to compare? Maybe his immune system found a way to adapt that could help Echo. It's worth trying, but how? I can't leave the clinic with Sunnyday watching, and you can't bring Phoenix here. I could meet you halfway, Michael suggested. Too risky, Hector interjected. They'll be monitoring all roads, probably using satellite surveillance too. Sarah's voice came through the speaker. There's something else. My journalist friend Emma found information about Project Pegasus. Redacted documents filed in a whistleblower case that was dismissed last year on national security grounds. What did they say? The project started as an attempt to create enhanced cavalry units for special operations, horses that could operate in remote environments with minimal support. But somewhere along the line, they started introducing human DNA sequences to enhance cognition and communication. Did the documents mention why some subjects would be culled? Hector asked. Yes, there were key behavioral markers they were looking for. Aggression levels, dominance tendencies, response to commands. Subjects that showed too much independent thought or resistance to control were eliminated. Michael felt a cold fury building inside him. They were killing them for being too intelligent, too independent. Essentially, yes. But there's more. The whistleblower, a scientist from the project who disappeared after the case was dismissed, claimed they achieved something unexpected in the 5th-generation subjects, something beyond their original parameters. What? Michael prompted when she fell silent. The document was heavily redacted, but one phrase came through: quantum entanglement at the neurological level. Hector whistled softly. That's some serious fringe science. What does it mean? Luis asked. In theory, Sarah explained, quantum entanglement is when particles become connected so that the state of one instantly influences the other, no matter the distance between them. If they achieve this at the neurological level, it would explain the telepathic abilities, Michael finished, and why they can communicate with each other, and possibly with humans, across distances. Exactly. But there's a problem. According to the whistleblower, maintaining the entanglement requires all subjects to remain alive and in relatively close proximity. If one dies, they all could be affected, Michael realized with growing alarm. Echo's condition might impact Phoenix and the others. I think it already is, Sarah confirmed. Nova started showing similar symptoms about an hour ago. Less severe, but the pattern is the same. Luis looked toward the barn. We should check on them. Michael stood immediately. Sarah, keep working with your colleague. We'll monitor the foals here and see if there's any change. After ending the call, they hurried to the barn. Phoenix was standing alert in his stall, ears forward, eyes fixed on the door as if he'd been waiting for them. Storm seemed agitated, pacing his enclosure, while Vortex lay down, his breathing noticeably more rapid than before. "They don't look good," Hector observed. Phoenix nickered softly as Michael approached, pressing his muzzle against the outstretched hand. "He knows something's wrong with the others," Michael said. "He's trying to reach them." As if confirming his words, the diamond mark on Phoenix's flank began to emit that now familiar blue glow. The foal's eyes closed in concentration, his small body trembling with effort. "Look at the others," Luis whispered. The marks on Storm and Vortex were also glowing, pulsing in the same rhythm as Phoenix's. The three foals seemed frozen in a moment of connection, linked by the ethereal light. Need all five together, dying separated. The thought hit Michael with stunning clarity. Not a vague impression, but precise words delivered directly to his consciousness. "They need to be together," he said aloud. "All five of them. Separation is killing them." "How do you know?" Hector asked sharply. Phoenix told me. "Just now." "In my mind?" Hector stared at him, then at the glowing marks on the foals. "I've seen some classified tech in my day, but this... We have to get them reunited," Michael insisted. "All five in one place." "And how exactly do you propose we do that?" Hector challenged. "Sarah can't move Echo and Nova without killing them, and we can't exactly walk into a veterinary clinic under surveillance by federal agents." Michael's mind raced, military training kicking in, assessing options, calculating risks, formulating a plan. "We need a distraction, something big enough to draw attention away from the clinic, even temporarily." "Like what?" Luis asked. Michael turned to Hector. "You still have those contacts in the press? The ones who helped expose that contractor scandal in Kandahar?" A slow smile spread across Hector's face. "I might. What did you have in mind?" "A very public expose. Project Pegasus revealed to the world. With evidence. That's playing with fire, Riley. The kind that gets people disappeared. I'm already on their radar. Might as well make it count." Hector considered this. "We'd need solid proof. Something undeniable." Michael looked at Phoenix, whose eyes had opened and were fixed on him with that unnerving intelligence. "I think I know how to get it." The next morning, a detailed dossier on Project Pegasus was delivered anonymously to 5 major news outlets simultaneously. It contained redacted government documents, genetic analysis reports, and most damning of all, a video of Phoenix, Storm, and Vortex with their glowing marks clearly visible, accompanied by a demonstration of their telepathic abilities. The footage showed Michael holding up cards with simple images: a circle, a square, a triangle, out of the foal's line of sight, while Phoenix consistently selected the matching shape from options presented to him. It wasn't definitive proof of telepathy, but it was compelling evidence of intelligence far beyond normal equine capacity. The dossier identified Alexander Sunnyday as the private contractor leading the program, detailed the illegal disposal of failed subjects, and raised serious ethical questions about genetic experimentation combining human and animal DNA. By noon, the story had exploded. News helicopters circled Sunnyday Equestrian Technologies headquarters. Protesters gathered at the gates, and congressional representatives were issuing statements calling for investigations. Michael watched the coverage from Hector's secure communications room, satellite feeds showing the chaos unfolding around Sunnyday's compound. "Think it worked?" Luis asked. "We're about to find out." Michael picked up the secure phone and dialed Sarah. "Are you seeing the news?" he asked when she answered. "Everyone is. The clinic staff can't talk about anything else. Even the agents watching the place are distracted." "How's Echo?" "Worse. His vital signs are failing. Nova too. Whatever connection they have, it's deteriorating." "We're moving now," Michael said decisively. "Be ready in 20 minutes. Back entrance." He hung up and turned to Hector. "We need your tactical vehicle." Hector nodded, already moving to a locked cabinet where he stored equipment that, strictly speaking, a civilian shouldn't possess. "You sure about this? Once you cross this line, there's no going back." "I crossed that line the moment I found them," Michael replied. "I'm not letting them die." While Luis prepared the foals for transport, Michael and Hector geared up. Body armor, communications equipment, and non-lethal weapons. Neither man spoke of the unspoken reality. If federal agents tried to stop them, things could turn lethal very quickly. "Like old times," Hector commented as they loaded the specially equipped SUV, a decommissioned military vehicle with reinforced chassis and bulletproof glass. "Let's hope not," Michael replied, thinking of firefights in dusty mountain passes, of friends lost and wounds that never fully healed. The drive to Sarah's clinic was tense, a race against both pursuit and time. Phoenix, secured in a specially designed harness in the back, seemed to understand the urgency, his eyes alert, body tense with anticipation. 2-minute ETA, Hector announced as they approached the clinic from a back road. Michael checked the surveillance feed on his tablet, courtesy of a small drone Hector had deployed ahead of them. 2 agents at the front, none visible at the rear. News van on the street is keeping them occupied. They pulled up to the back entrance exactly on schedule. Sarah was waiting, her face drawn with stress and lack of sleep. "Hurry," she urged as they quickly unloaded the 3 foals. "Echo is failing fast." Inside, they found Lupita and another woman, presumably Sarah's medical school colleague, monitoring Echo and Nova, both connected to life support equipment. Echo's condition was visibly dire, his small body racked with tremors, the parallel line marks on his flank dull and lifeless. "Phoenix," Michael said urgently, guiding the smallest foal forward. "Help him." Phoenix needed no encouragement. He moved directly to Echo's side, pressing his muzzle against the sick foal's neck. Almost immediately, his diamond mark began to glow, the blue light intensifying until it illuminated the room. Storm and Vortex positioned themselves near Nova, their marks also beginning to pulse with that strange energy. "It's happening," Sarah whispered, amazed. The mark on Echo's flank flickered weakly, then gradually began to respond, synchronizing with Phoenix's pulsing light. Nova's circle/symbol followed until all 5 marks were glowing in perfect unison. Michael felt it then, a presence in his mind far stronger than before, a merged consciousness that seemed to encompass all 5 foals simultaneously. Together, healing, becoming. "Thank you." The words carried emotions with them. Gratitude, relief, and something else. Something that felt like purpose. "Their vital signs are stabilizing," Sarah's colleague announced, staring at the monitors in disbelief. "This is impossible." "Not impossible," Sarah corrected. "Just beyond our current understanding." For several minutes, no one spoke, all watching in awe as the 5 foals communed in their silent, luminous language. The glow gradually subsided, but the connection remained visible in their synchronized movements, the way they positioned themselves in a protective circle. The moment of wonder was shattered by the sound of vehicles pulling up outside, doors slamming, voices shouting commands. "Federal agents!" "We have a warrant." Hector moved to the window, peering cautiously through the blinds. 4 SUVs, at least a dozen agents, heavy tactical gear. Michael looked at the foals, at their newly stabilized connection. Moving them now could undo everything they'd accomplished. "We need more time," he said. "They're still healing." "Time's something we don't have," Hector replied grimly. Luis stepped forward, his weathered face resolute. "I will buy you time." "Luis, no," Michael began, but the older man raised a hand to silence him. "I am an old man, Jefe. I have lived my life. These little ones are just beginning theirs." He looked at the foals with an expression of wonder. "Besides, I am just the ranch hand. What do I know of secret projects and genetic experiments? I am simply delivering medicine for sick horses." Before Michael could protest further, Luis straightened his shoulders and walked calmly to the front of the clinic. They watched on the security monitor as he stepped outside, hands raised in a gesture of compliance. "Buenos dias, señores," his voice came through the audio feed. "How can I help you?" While Luis distracted the agents with his performance as a confused ranch employee, Hector silently directed them toward a storage room at the back of the clinic. "There's a service tunnel," Sarah explained in a whisper. "It was used to move large animals between buildings before the new wing was constructed." They worked quickly, transferring the now stronger foals to transport harnesses. Echo was still weak but able to stand with support from Phoenix, who stayed constantly at his side. "Ready?" Michael asked, checking that everyone was positioned to move. Sarah nodded, her hand on Nova's lead rope. "Where will we go?" "I have a place," Hector replied. "An old research station in the Carson National Forest. Remote. Defensible." "And after that?" Sarah pressed. "They won't stop looking." Michael watched as Phoenix guided Echo forward, supporting the weaker foal with his own body, a gesture of protection that seemed profoundly unanimal-like in its deliberate care. "One step at a time, Doc," he said quietly. "First we get them to safety, then we figure out how to keep them free." As they prepared to enter the tunnel, Michael felt once more that distinct presence in his mind. 5 consciousnesses now moving in concert, a single thought projected with unmistakable clarity. "We are more than they intended, and we have chosen you." The implication was clear. Whatever Sunnyday had been trying to create, the result had evolved beyond their control. These weren't just experimental subjects or military assets. They were new beings with their own will, their own purpose. And somehow they had chosen Michael Riley to help them survive in a world that wasn't ready for their existence. The tunnel stretched before them, dark but offering escape. Behind them, the sounds of the federal raid grew louder. Time was running out. Michael looked back one last time at the clinic where their journey had begun, then stepped into the darkness, following the soft blue glow of Phoenix's mark lighting the way forward. The old research station in Carson National Forest stood silent among ancient pines, its weathered buildings nearly invisible against the backdrop of mountain wilderness. Once used by the Forest Service to monitor local wildlife populations, it had been abandoned for budget reasons nearly a decade ago. Now it served as their sanctuary, 5 extraordinary foals and their unlikely human protectors. It had been 3 days since their narrow escape from the clinic. Luis had been detained for questioning but released after several hours. His performance as a simple ranch hand convincing enough that the federal agents couldn't justify holding him. He'd made his way to the research station the following day, guided by coordinates Hector had provided. Michael stood on the main cabin's porch, watching the afternoon sunlight filter through the trees. In a makeshift paddock nearby, the 5 foals grazed peacefully, their conditions improving hourly since being reunited. Even Echo, the weakest, now moved with growing strength, the strange parallel line mark on his flank occasionally glimmering with faint blue light. Sarah emerged from the main building, her medical bag in hand, dark circles under her eyes testifying to her exhaustion. "How are they?" Michael asked. "Remarkable," she replied, leaning against the porch railing. "Their recovery rates are unlike anything I've ever seen. Echo's blood work is normalizing, and his neurological readings are stabilizing. It's as if being together is recalibrating their systems." "They need each other to survive," Michael said, remembering Phoenix's desperate telepathic message. "Not just emotionally, but physically." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "The quantum entanglement theory makes more sense now. Their neural networks are literally connected at the quantum level. Separate them too far, and the connection strains, eventually breaking down. Which is why Sunnyday was transporting all 5 together," Michael realized. "They knew the foals couldn't survive in isolation." "Then why abandon them in the desert?" Sarah wondered. "Maybe something went wrong during transport. Or maybe," Michael's expression darkened, "maybe they were testing the limits of the connection, seeing how far they could push it before it broke." "That's monstrous," Sarah whispered. "This whole project is monstrous," he replied grimly. The door opened behind them and Hector stepped out, a satellite tablet in his hand. "You need to see this," he said, handing the device to Michael. On screen was a live news broadcast. A somber reporter stood in front of Sunnyday Equestrian Technologies headquarters, where federal agents could be seen removing boxes of documents and computer equipment. Sutter following anonymous whistleblower revelations about Project Pegasus, a joint investigation by the FBI and Department of Justice has led to a raid on Sunnyday Equestrian Technologies. Sources close to the investigation confirm that evidence of illegal genetic experimentation has been seized, along with financial records suggesting misappropriation of government funds. Michael felt a surge of satisfaction. It worked. They're going after Sunnyday. "Don't celebrate yet," Hector cautioned, taking back the tablet and switching to another news channel. This time the anchor was interviewing a stern-faced military officer, identified as General Warren Blackwood, Department of Defense Special Research Division. "General Blackwood, what can you tell us about these allegations of a secret military program involving horse-human genetic hybridization?" the reporter asked. The general's expression remained impassive. "I can confirm that the Department of Defense has supported research into enhanced equine capabilities for potential military applications in remote environments. However, the characterization of this research as hybridization is sensationalist and inaccurate. All research was conducted within ethical guidelines and with proper oversight." Then why the raid on Sunnyday Equestrian Technologies? Alexander Sunnyday appears to have exceeded the parameters of his government contracts and engaged in unauthorized experiments. This represents a serious breach of trust, and the DoD is cooperating fully with the investigation. And what about reports of 5 escaped subjects, genetically modified foals that allegedly display unusual cognitive abilities? At this, the general's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "Those reports are highly exaggerated. The animals in question are valuable research subjects that represent a significant investment of taxpayer funds. They are government property and need to be recovered for proper evaluation and care. And the alleged telepathic abilities? I won't dignify science fiction with a response. These are selectively bred horses with enhanced cognitive capabilities, nothing more. Their return is a matter of national security, and anyone harboring them is committing a federal offense. Hector switched off the feed. They're throwing Sunny Day under the bus while securing their claim on the foals. Classic Pentagon damage control. Michael's jaw tightened. They're calling them property. Of course they are, Hector replied. The government invested millions in their creation. They're not about to acknowledge they might be something more. Something with rights. Sarah looked toward the paddock where Phoenix was watching them intently, as if following their conversation. What happens when they discover the foals can actually communicate telepathically? That they have something closer to human consciousness than animal? That's exactly why we can't let them be taken, Michael said firmly. Luis approached from the stable area, wiping his hands on a cloth. The security perimeter is set up, Jefe. Motion sensors, trail cameras, early warning system. We'll know if anyone comes within 2 miles of this place. Good, Michael nodded appreciatively. But we can't stay here indefinitely. They'll expand their search area eventually. What's the alternative? Sarah asked. We can't keep running. The foals need stability, especially as they grow. Michael had been considering this problem since their arrival. We need leverage, he said finally. Something that makes it too costly for them to come after us. Like what? Hector asked skeptically. These are people with black budgets and zero accountability. Public opinion, Michael replied. The video we released caused a sensation, but it wasn't definitive proof of telepathic communication. What if we could demonstrate it beyond any doubt? Make it impossible for the government to treat the foals as simple property? You're talking about a public demonstration? Sarah looked concerned. That would expose our location. Not necessarily, Michael countered. We could use a secure video feed, release it through trusted media contacts. Hector considered this. Risky, but it might work. If enough people see irrefutable evidence that these foals have near-human intelligence, it would create a public relations nightmare for the DoD, Michael finished. Make it politically impossible for them to treat the foals as experimental subjects. Their discussion was interrupted by an unexpected sound. Phoenix nickering softly, then trotting to the paddock fence closest to them. The small foal pawed at the ground, then raised his head and looked directly at Michael. Show them more than words. Show them who we are becoming. The telepathic message was stronger than before, the words forming with crystal clarity in Michael's mind. And for the first time, he sensed something beyond words. Images, impressions of what Phoenix wanted to demonstrate. I think Phoenix has his own ideas about what to show the world, Michael said, moving toward the paddock. The others followed, watching as Michael opened the gate, and Phoenix immediately trotted to his side. The other foals gathered behind Phoenix, forming a semicircle, their strange marks occasionally flickering with faint blue light. What's happening? Sarah whispered. I'm not sure, Michael replied, crouching to Phoenix's eye level. What do you want to show us? In response, all 5 marks suddenly illuminated with brilliant blue light, pulsing in perfect synchronization. Phoenix raised his muzzle and touched it to Michael's forehead. The world dissolved. Michael gasped as his consciousness expanded beyond his body, beyond human perceptions. He was suddenly aware of the forest in ways he'd never experienced. The complex network of roots beneath the soil, the movement of air currents above the canopy, the heartbeats of animals hiding in the underbrush. More incredibly, he could sense the others. Sarah, Hector, Luis, their minds like bright constellations of thought and emotion. And he could see, feel, know the foals as they truly were. 5 interconnected beings whose consciousness flowed between individual bodies, sharing experiences, memories, sensations. Not separate animals, but parts of a greater whole, a collective intelligence evolving into something unprecedented. This is who we are, came the unified thought. No longer just Phoenix's voice, but a harmony of all 5. This is what they fear. As suddenly as it began, the experience ended. Michael found himself on his knees, shaking, tears streaming down his face. Around him, the others looked equally stunned. Sarah openly weeping, Luis crossing himself, Hector standing rigid with shock. Did you all feel that? Michael asked hoarsely. They nodded, words failing them. They're not just telepathic, Sarah said finally, her voice trembling. They're a unified consciousness distributed across 5 bodies. A hive mind, but with individual components. More than that, Luis added softly. They showed us the world through their senses, things no human can perceive. Tactically speaking, Hector said, his professional assessment unable to mask his awe, what they just demonstrated would revolutionize battlefield awareness. No wonder the military wants them back. Michael looked at Phoenix, who returned his gaze with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. Is that what you want us to show the world? What you just showed us? Yes. Truth. Understanding. Protection. It would change everything, Michael whispered. How humanity sees consciousness, intelligence, the boundaries between species, already changed. Cannot go backward, only forward. The philosophical implications were staggering. If these beings, neither fully horse nor human but something new, could be recognized as sentient, as having rights, it would force a fundamental reconsideration of humanity's relationship with other forms of intelligence. I think we need to make some calls, Michael said decisively, starting with Emma, Sarah's journalist friend, and we need someone with scientific credibility to witness and validate what the foals can do. Sarah nodded. My colleague from UNM Medical School. She's already seen their unusual physiology. She'd be a credible scientific witness. Good. Hector, can your press contacts arrange for a live feed that can't be traced or shut down easily? Give me a day to set it up, Hector replied. I know people who specialized in getting footage out of countries that didn't want the world seeing what was happening there. Luis, we'll need to tighten security even further. If we're doing this, we can't risk being found before the broadcast. Luis nodded solemnly. I will prepare, Jefe. As they dispersed to begin preparations, Michael remained with Phoenix. The other foals gathered around them in that strange, protective formation they naturally assumed. You're taking an enormous risk, he told them softly. Once you reveal yourselves to the world, there's no going back. Already no going back, came the unified response. For us, for you, for all. Michael nodded, understanding the truth of it. The moment he'd found 5 abandoned foals in the desert, all their paths had been irrevocably altered. Then we do this together, he said. Phoenix pressed his muzzle against Michael's palm in confirmation. 2 days later, the old research station had been transformed into a broadcast center of sorts. Hector's contacts had provided satellite uplink equipment that would distribute their feeds simultaneously to multiple news outlets, making it nearly impossible to block or trace. Sarah's colleague, Dr. Amara Wilson, a respected neurologist who had helped save Echo's life, had arrived the previous evening, still processing what Sarah had told her about the foal's true nature. I've studied animal cognition for years, she told Michael as they prepared the main room for the demonstration. But what you're describing goes beyond anything in current scientific understanding. That's why we need your expert validation, Michael replied. People might dismiss us as crackpots or hoaxers, but your scientific credentials will make them take this seriously. Doctor, Wilson nodded thoughtfully. If what Sarah described is real, a distributed consciousness with telepathic capabilities, it would fundamentally change our understanding of sentience itself. It's real, Michael assured her, and you're about to experience it firsthand. Emma Chen, Sarah's journalist friend from the Albuquerque Journal, was setting up multiple cameras to capture the demonstration from different angles. A petite woman with intense focus, she had jumped at the chance to cover what could be the story of the century. We go live in 30 minutes, she announced. The feed will go directly to the major networks, plus streaming platforms. Conservative estimate, potential audience of tens of millions within the first hour. Michael felt a flutter of anxiety. And you're sure it can't be traced? The signal is being bounced through 17 different servers on 4 continents, Hector replied. By the time they figure out where it originated, we'll be long gone. That was the other part of their plan. Immediately after the broadcast, they would evacuate to another location Hector had prepared, a compound even more remote than their current hideout. Luis entered the room, his expression somber. They are ready, he said, referring to the foals. Michael nodded and followed him outside to the paddock where the 5 young Mustangs waited with an eerie stillness, as if they understood the gravity of what was about to happen. Are you sure about this? Michael asked them, knowing they could perceive his thoughts. Phoenix stepped forward, touching his muzzle to Michael's hand. It is necessary. For our future. For all futures. There was a wisdom in the thought that belied the foal's physical age, a perspective that seemed to encompass far more than individual survival. All right then, Michael said softly. Let's change the world. They brought the foals into the prepared room, where cameras were positioned to capture every angle. Sarah and Dr. Wilson would guide the scientific aspects of the demonstration, while Emma would moderate the broadcast. Michael would serve as the primary interface with the foals, given his established telepathic connection with them. "Live in 5 minutes," Emma announced, checking her equipment one last time. Michael knelt beside Phoenix. The other foals arrayed behind him in their now familiar formation. "Remember," he said quietly, "once we do this, there's no hiding what you are anymore. The whole world will know." Understanding is protection came the united thought of all five. Truth is freedom. Michael wished he shared their certainty. In his experience, humans often responded to the unknown with fear rather than understanding. But it was too late for doubts now. 3 minutes, Emma called. Sarah and Dr. Wilson took their positions, scientific instruments ready to record the foal's vital signs, brainwave patterns, and other measurable phenomena. 2 minutes. Hector stood by the door, weapon discreetly holstered but accessible, ever vigilant against potential threats. 1 minute. Luis made the sign of the cross, murmuring a quiet prayer. 30 seconds. Michael took a deep breath, centering himself. Phoenix pressed against his side, a gesture of reassurance that touched him deeply. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're live. Emma faced the main camera, her professional demeanor masking any nervousness. Good evening. I'm Emma Chen, investigative reporter for the Albuquerque Journal. What you are about to witness may challenge your fundamental understanding of intelligence, consciousness, and the boundaries between species. 3 days ago, allegations emerged about a classified military program called Project Pegasus involving genetic experimentation on horses. Tonight, we bring you the subjects of that experimentation. 5 young Mustangs with extraordinary abilities that raise profound scientific and ethical questions. The camera panned to show the foals, standing calmly despite the equipment surrounding them. With me are Dr. Sarah Mendez, a veterinarian who has been treating these animals since their rescue. Dr. Amara Wilson, a neurologist from the University of New Mexico Medical School, and Michael Riley, a former Marine who discovered these foals abandoned in the New Mexico desert. Michael stepped forward. What we're about to demonstrate isn't a trick or an illusion. These 5 foals are the result of a classified program that combined equine and human DNA to create something entirely new. Beings with distributed consciousness and telepathic abilities. Dr. Wilson spoke next, her academic credentials displayed on screen. As a scientist, I approach this with extreme skepticism. What you're about to witness has been subjected to rigorous controls to eliminate any possibility of fraud or misinterpretation. The demonstration began with simple tests, Michael showing the foals images they couldn't possibly see, which Phoenix then identified with 100% accuracy. They progressed to more complex tasks, including mathematical problems that Phoenix solved by selecting the correct answer from multiple options. While impressive, these behaviors could potentially be explained by conventional training techniques or subtle cueing. Dr. Wilson explained. What comes next, however, cannot. Sarah stepped forward with medical imaging equipment. We'll now demonstrate the neural synchronization between all 5 subjects. These real-time brain scans will show identical patterns activating simultaneously across 5 physically separate brains, something that defies all current understanding of neuroscience. The monitors displayed the brain activity of all 5 foals, initially showing distinct individual patterns. Then as their marks began to glow with that ethereal blue light, the patterns synchronized perfectly. 5 brains functioning as one unified system. Dr. Wilson's professional composure slipped, her amazement evident. This is unprecedented. We're witnessing 5 physically separate brains operating in perfect synchrony, sharing information and processing in ways that shouldn't be possible according to our current understanding of neurobiology. The most compelling demonstration came next. Michael had prepared a sealed envelope containing a complex image that no one present had seen. It had been selected randomly from a database by a computer program just before the broadcast. The envelope remained sealed, the image hidden from everyone, including Michael. Phoenix, when Michael said, addressing the smallest foal, "Can you show us what's in the envelope?" The 5 marks glowed brighter, and Phoenix pawed at the ground 5 times, then 3 times. 5, 3, Michael interpreted. Dr. Wilson, please open the sealed envelope and tell us what you find." Dr. Wilson carefully opened the envelope and withdrew a photograph, her eyes widening. It's an image of 5 mountains with 3 eagles flying above them. The camera zoomed in to show the photograph, confirming her description. This is not a trick, Emma emphasized for viewers. The envelope was sealed and randomly selected by computer minutes before broadcast. There was no possible way for anyone to know its contents, yet these foals somehow perceived it without seeing it. The demonstration continued with increasingly undeniable evidence of the foal's extraordinary abilities. But the most powerful moment came near the end, when Phoenix approached Dr. Wilson and gently touched his muzzle to her forehead. Her reaction was immediate and profound, gasping, eyes widening, tears forming. "Oh my God," she whispered, visibly shaken. I can feel them. All of them, as one consciousness. And they're showing me. It's incredible. Perceptions beyond human senses." When Phoenix finally withdrew, Dr. Wilson looked directly into the camera, her scientific reserve completely shattered. "As a scientist, I've spent my career studying the brain and consciousness. What I just experienced cannot be explained by our current scientific paradigms. These beings are not merely animals with enhanced intelligence. They possess a form of unified consciousness distributed across multiple bodies, with sensory capabilities and cognitive processes that exceed human parameters. By any meaningful definition, they are sentient beings with a unique form of intelligence." Michael stepped forward again. "These 5 beings were created by a government program without their consent. They were abandoned to die when they didn't meet military specifications, specifically because they couldn't be controlled. They are not property. They are not weapons. They are a new form of intelligent life, and they deserve protection under the law." Emma faced the camera for the closing statement. "The implications of what we've witnessed today extend far beyond a single government program or 5 unusual foals. They force us to reconsider our definitions of personhood, of rights, of the very nature of consciousness itself. We are broadcasting these revelations not to create sensation, but because the truth deserves to be known, and these beings deserve to be recognized for what they truly are. And to those in power who would attempt to reclaim these beings as property," Michael added, his expression resolute, "know this, the world is watching now. They cannot be hidden away again. They cannot be silenced. The truth about Project Pegasus is now in the public domain, and these 5 extraordinary beings have become a part of our collective consciousness." As the broadcast ended, the room fell silent, the magnitude of what they'd done settling over them all. "And now," Hector said quietly, checking his watch, "we have approximately 20 minutes before all hell breaks loose. Time to move." They had anticipated the response. Satellite tracking of the broadcast signal, rapid deployment of federal agents, perhaps even military forces. Their evacuation plan was already in motion, vehicles packed and ready at strategic points around the property. Michael knelt beside Phoenix one last time in the room where they had just changed history. "There's no going back now," he said softly. "Forward," came the unified response. "Only forward." Together, outside, the first helicopter could be heard in the distance, approaching fast. The caravan moved through the night like ghosts, headlights extinguished, navigating by moonlight in Hector's intimate knowledge of the backcountry. 3 vehicles traveling in staggered formation, Michael's truck carrying Phoenix, Storm, and Vortex, Sarah's modified veterinary van transporting Echo and Nova, and Hector's tactical SUV bringing up the rear with Luis, Emma, and Dr. Wilson. They had escaped the research station with barely 10 minutes to spare, slipping away on an unmarked fire road just as the first black helicopters appeared over the ridge. The broadcast had created exactly the firestorm they'd anticipated. Hector's secure satellite phone buzzed constantly with updates from his contacts in media and military circles. "It's gone global," he reported during a brief stop to check on the foals. "Every major news outlet is running the story. Project Pegasus is trending worldwide. The Pentagon is in full damage control mode, and Sunnyday was just taken into federal custody." "Any official response yet?" Michael asked, helping Sarah administer a mild sedative to Echo, who was showing signs of stress from the hasty evacuation. Department of Defense issued a statement calling the broadcast misleading and scientifically unsound. "They're sticking to the story that these are just specially bred horses, nothing more." Hector's expression was grim. "But they've mobilized significant resources to find us. Homeland Security, FBI, even elements of the 160th SOAR. Night Stalkers?" Michael's brow furrowed. The 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment was the Army's elite helicopter unit, typically deployed only for the most critical missions. That's a serious escalation. "They're treating this as a national security crisis," Hector confirmed, "which tells us everything we need to know about how important these foals really are to whatever they were planning." Phoenix nickered softly from the transport compartment, his eyes reflecting the moonlight as he watched their conversation. Michael could sense his concern, not for himself but for the others, especially Echo, who still remained the weakest of the five. Safe place soon? The telepathic question was tinged with worry. Soon, Michael assured him, reaching through the partition to stroke the foal's neck. Just a few more hours. Their destination was a remote property deep in the Gila wilderness, a former commune that had been abandoned in the 1990s, recently purchased through multiple shell companies by one of Hector's more paranoid associates. Off-grid, supplied by natural springs and solar power, with multiple escape routes and natural features that would frustrate aerial surveillance. Not a permanent solution, but a place to regroup and plan their next move. We need to keep moving, Luis urged, scanning the starlit sky for signs of pursuit. The longer we stay in one place, the easier we are to phone in. They continued their journey through the rugged terrain, following dry creek beds and game trails that wouldn't appear on standard maps. Michael drove with focused precision, every sense alert for danger, the weight of responsibility for the five extraordinary beings in his care, a constant presence in his mind. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten when they reached the hidden turnoff to the commune. Concealed by a natural rock formation, the narrow dirt track wound through dense pinyon pines before opening onto a secluded valley. Several weathered buildings clustered around a central courtyard, with corrals and outbuildings scattered across the property. Home, sweet home, Hector murmured as they pulled up to the main lodge. For now, at least. They worked quickly to settle the foals in a converted barn, equipped with fresh straw, water, and the medical supplies Sarah deemed essential. Despite the stress of travel, all five appeared to be in stable condition, their mysterious connections seemingly providing comfort during the difficult journey. While Sarah and Dr. Wilson conducted thorough examinations, Michael joined Hector, Luis, and Emma in the main building to assess their situation. The broadcast has created exactly the public pressure we hoped for, Emma reported, scrolling through news feeds on her tablet. Social media is exploding with debate about the foal's status. Scientists are calling for independent verification of what we showed. Animal rights groups are mobilizing. Several members of Congress are demanding investigations into Project Pegasus. And the downside? Michael prompted, knowing there would be one. Emma's expression sobered. There are also calls for the foals to be taken into government custody for their own protection. Religious groups questioning whether they have souls. Bioethicists debating their moral status. And conspiracy theories. Everything from alien involvement to claims that this is all an elaborate hoax. The debate is good, Hector noted. Confusion and controversy buy us time. How much time? Luis asked practically. Not enough, Hector admitted. Despite the public attention, the military has classified the foals as sensitive national security assets. They'll continue hunting us, just more carefully to avoid public backlash. Michael paced the worn floorboards, mind racing through scenarios, contingencies, options. His military training had prepared him for combat operations, for survival in hostile territory, but not for protecting 5 telepathic horse-human hybrids from the combined resources of the U.S. government. We need a more permanent solution, he said finally. Somewhere they can grow up safely, develop whatever they're becoming without interference. Another country, Luis suggested. Canada, perhaps, or deeper into Mexico. Border crossings would be nearly impossible, Hector countered. Every port of entry, every crossing point will be watched. What about legal protection? Emma proposed. If we could get them classified as sentient beings with rights, not property. That would take years of court battle, Michael said, shaking his head. Time we don't have. Their discussion was interrupted by Sarah's entrance, her expression troubled. We have a problem, she announced. Echo's condition is deteriorating again. The stress of the move seems to have triggered a relapse of the autoimmune response, and it's affecting the others through their connection. Michael immediately headed for the barn, the others following close behind. Inside, they found Dr. Wilson monitoring Echo, who lay on his side, breathing labored, the strange parallel line mark on his flank flickering erratically. Phoenix stood beside the sick foal, his own diamond mark pulsing with steady blue light, seemingly trying to stabilize his faltering brother. Storm, Vortex, and Nova formed a protective circle around them both, their marks also glowing, but with varying intensity. What can we do? Michael asked, the helplessness in his voice painful to hear. I've administered anti-inflammatories and immune suppressants, Sarah replied, but his system is unique. The hybrid DNA makes conventional treatments unpredictable. Dr. Wilson looked up from her instruments. There's something else happening here. The quantum entanglement between them, it's shifting, becoming more centralized. What does that mean? Michael asked. It's like the 5 separate consciousness points are consolidating toward a more unified state. Phoenix appears to be serving as an anchor or hub for the others. Michael approached Phoenix, who acknowledged him with a brief glance before returning his attention to Echo. Can you tell me what's happening? Michael asked softly. How can we help? The telepathic response came not just from Phoenix, but from all 5 simultaneously, their merged voice stronger yet somehow strained, evolving, growing beyond separate bodies. Echo struggles with the transition. His form resists the change. Change to what? Michael pressed gently. What we were meant to become, not what they intended. More. The cryptic answer raised more questions than it answered, but Michael sensed the foal's distress and didn't push further. How can we help Echo through this? Transition, need quiet, need time, need safety. We'll give you all of that, Michael promised, looking to Sarah. Can we move them deeper into the barn, away from distractions? Make it darker, quieter? Sarah nodded. There's an inner stall area we could prepare. Doctor, Wilson and I can set up monitoring equipment there. For the next several hours, they focused entirely on creating the optimal environment for the foal's mysterious process. The inner stall was lined with fresh straw, water and feed placed within easy reach, and the space darkened except for the soft glow of essential monitoring equipment. Michael remained with them throughout, sitting quietly in a corner, Phoenix occasionally approaching to touch his muzzle to Michael's hand, as if drawing or offering comfort in the connection. The blue glow of their marks pulsed in changing patterns, sometimes synchronizing across all 5, sometimes rippling from one to another in what seemed like complex combinations. As night fell, Hector insisted on taking watch so Michael could rest. Reluctantly, he made his way to a small room in the main lodge where a cot had been prepared. Despite his exhaustion, sleep eluded him, his mind churning with questions about what the foals were becoming and what it might mean for their future. He must have dozed eventually because he woke suddenly to Luis shaking his shoulder. Jefe, you need to come quickly. Something is happening with the foals. Fully alert in an instant, Michael followed Luis at a run to the barn. Inside the inner stall, Sarah and Dr. Wilson stood transfixed, watching a phenomenon unlike anything they'd witnessed before. All 5 foals stood in a perfect circle, their bodies rigid, heads touching in the center. Their marks glowed with blinding intensity, no longer just blue but pulsing through a spectrum of colors, each shift synchronized across all 5 bodies. The air itself seemed charged with electricity, tiny arcs of blue-white energy occasionally visible between their touching muzzles. What's happening? Michael whispered, afraid to disrupt whatever process was unfolding. I have no idea, Bart's Dr. Wilson replied, her scientific detachment giving way to wonder. Their brain activity is off the charts. Patterns I've never seen before. Energy readings that shouldn't be possible from biological organisms. It started about 20 minutes ago, Sarah added. Echo seemed to be failing, and then this. Michael took a step forward, drawn by an inexplicable sense that he was needed, but Hector's hand on his arm held him back. Wait, the older man cautioned. Let it play out. The light emanating from the foals intensified until it was almost painful to watch, their small bodies seeming to blur at the edges, boundaries becoming indistinct. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, Michael thought he saw not 5 separate foals, but a single luminous entity, a unified being of pure energy occupying the space where 5 bodies had stood. Then with a soft sound like a sigh, the light receded. The foals separated, each returning to normal appearance except for their marks, which continued to glow with a steady, harmonious pulse. Echo, who had been at death's door hours earlier, stood strong and alert, his eyes bright, body vibrant with renewed energy. Phoenix approached Michael, his gaze containing depths no ordinary animal could possess. Echo is stabilized. The transition begins. We are becoming. Becoming what? Michael asked aloud. Something new. Something more. The next evolution. Dr. Wilson was already examining Echo, her amazement evident. This is impossible, she murmured, checking his vital signs. His autoimmune response has completely resolved. Cell structure is stabilizing. It's like his body has been reprogrammed at the genetic level. Sarah joined her, confirming the findings with her own instruments. All 5 of them are showing similar changes. Their DNA is harmonizing, for lack of a better term. The conflict between human and equine genetic material is resolving itself into a stable new configuration. Self-directed evolution? Dr. Wilson breathed, the concept clearly staggering to her scientific mind. They're consciously guiding their own genetic development. Phoenix nickered softly, touching his muzzle to Michael's hand in what had become their familiar gesture of connection. We need your protection while we complete the change. Vulnerable now. Others sense what is happening. They come. Michael felt a chill at the words. Others? You mean the military? Yes. But not only them. Sunnyday created more like us. Failed attempts. Unstable. Dangerous. They search for us. Want to absorb what we have become. This new revelation stunned Michael. There are more like you? Not like us. Earlier versions. Broken. Angry. Under their control. The implications were horrifying. If Sunnyday and the military had other hybrid creations, ones they could control, ones without the independent consciousness that had made Phoenix and his siblings failures in their eyes, they might send them to track and capture the 5. How many? Michael asked urgently. 3 survive. They come soon. Today. Michael turned to Hector. We need to increase security immediately. Set up additional perimeter warnings. And I need weapons, non-lethal if possible. What's happening? Hector asked, already moving toward the door. Phoenix says there are 3 other hybrids, earlier versions, still under Sunnyday's control. They're coming for them. Today, the news galvanized the group into action. Hector and Luis immediately began fortifying the compound, setting additional sensors and preparing defensive positions. Sarah and Dr. Wilson gathered their medical supplies, preparing for potential injuries. Emma approached Michael as he checked his own equipment. The combat knife he always carried, a 9mm Hector had provided, and a tranquilizer gun Sarah had brought from her clinic. I should document this, she said quietly. Whatever happens here is part of their story. Michael considered her request. Having a journalist record events might provide some protection, evidence of what was happening in case things went badly. Stay close to Sarah and Dr. Wilson, he finally agreed. If anything happens to us, make sure the world knows the truth. By mid-morning, the compound was as secure as they could make it with their limited resources. The foals remained in the barn, Phoenix insisting through their telepathic connection that they needed to stay together to continue their mysterious transformation. Michael stood on the lodge's roof, binoculars scanning the surrounding wilderness. The Gila's rugged terrain provided excellent natural cover, but also created countless approaches that couldn't all be monitored. See anything? Hector called from below. Nothing yet, Michael replied. But if they're using the other hybrids to track ours, they might approach from unexpected. The perimeter alarm cut him off, a shrill electronic tone indicating a breach at the southwestern boundary, nearly a mile from the compound. They're here, Michael said grimly, descending from his observation post with practiced efficiency. Hector handed him a radio. Luis is at the western lookout. I'll take north and east. Michael nodded, heading immediately to the barn where Sarah and Dr. Wilson were securing the inner stall area. We have company, he told them tersely. Get the foals as deep inside as possible and stay with them. Emma, you too. Phoenix met him at the stall entrance, his demeanor alert but surprisingly calm given the circumstances. They send 2-7 first. The hunter, he feels us. 2-7? Michael questioned. His designation. 2nd generation, 7th subject. Predator instincts enhanced. Highly aggressive. Can you hide your presence? Mask the connection somehow? Trying. But the change makes us brighter to them. Hard to conceal. Michael placed a reassuring hand on Phoenix's neck. Stay together. Focus on your transformation. We'll handle the threat. Phoenix's response carried unexpected emotion, concern not for himself or his siblings, but for Michael. Be careful. 2-7 was made to kill. With that sobering warning, Michael joined Hector outside, the 2 men taking defensive positions with clear sight lines to the perimeter breach. What exactly are we expecting? Hector asked quietly, his rifle trained on the tree line. Phoenix called it 2-7, 2nd generation, 7th subject, apparently bred with enhanced predatory instincts. Sounds charming, Hector muttered. They waited in tense silence, every sense alert for movement. The minutes stretched painfully, the forest seemingly holding its breath around them. The radio crackled. Movement at Sector 4, Luis reported, his voice tense but controlled. Something large. Moving fast. Can you identify? Michael responded. Negative. It's... Luis's transmission cut off abruptly, replaced by a sound that raised the hairs on Michael's neck. A high-pitched, unnatural whinny that contained nothing of the gentle nickering of Phoenix and his siblings. This was the cry of a predator. "Luis, report," Michael called into the radio. No response. Hector was already moving towards Sector 4, his movement silent despite his size and age. Years of special operations training evident in his fluid advance. Michael followed, maintaining distance between them to avoid presenting a single target. They found Luis's observation post abandoned, his radio lying on the ground beside scattered equipment. Blood spattered the rocks, not a lot, but enough to indicate injury. "Luis," Michael called softly, scanning the surrounding forest. A low groan answered from behind a large boulder. They approached cautiously to find Luis wedged into a narrow space, clutching his arm where a deep gash ran from shoulder to elbow. "It came from nowhere," he gasped as Sarah, who had followed them despite instructions to stay with the foals, quickly examined the wound. "Fast. Like nothing I've ever seen." "Did you see what it looked like?" Michael asked, helping Sarah apply a pressure bandage. Luis nodded, his face pale from blood loss. "Like a horse, but wrong. Larger, leaner. Eyes," he shuddered. "Not animal eyes. And it had teeth. Predator teeth." "We need to get him back to the compound," Sarah said urgently. "You two go," Michael decided. "Hector and I will track this thing." "Be careful," Luis warned as Sarah helped him up. "It's intelligent. It set a trap for me." Waited until I checked the first alarm, then circled behind. Michael and Hector shared a look. This wasn't just an animal, it was a tactically aware hunter. They moved deeper into the forest, following disturbances in the underbrush. Broken twigs, displaced stones, occasional drops of an oily black substance that might have been blood, though unlike any blood Michael had ever seen. "It's leading us away from the compound," Hector noted after 20 minutes of careful tracking. "Or circling around to approach from another direction," Michael countered. "We should split up. I'll continue following this trail. You head back and circle the perimeter." Hector hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the plan, but nodded. "Radio check every 5 minutes. Anything suspicious, you fall back immediately." Michael agreed and continued alone, every sense hyper-alert, the combat awareness he'd honed in Afghanistan settling over him like a familiar shroud. The forest had gone unnaturally quiet. No bird song, no rustling of small animals, as if everything living had fled the area. A twig snapped somewhere to his left. Michael froze, turning slowly toward the sound. Nothing visible in the dense underbrush, but he could feel it now. A presence, watching, calculating. "I know you're there," he said calmly, leveraging the knowledge Phoenix had shared. 2-7, right? Second generation, 7 subject. A low sound, something between a growl and a whinny, emanated from the brush, followed by movement as a figure emerged into a shaft of sunlight penetrating the canopy. Michael's breath caught. It had the basic shape of a horse, but the resemblance ended there. Larger than a normal horse, but leaner, almost skeletal, with unnaturally long limbs and a head that was a nightmarish fusion of equine and something else. The muzzle shorter, the jaw more pronounced, the teeth clearly visible and distinctly carnivorous. Its coat was a dull gray black that seemed to absorb light, and a symbol was branded on its flank. Not the elegant marks of Phoenix and his siblings, but a crude numerical designation, 2-7. Most disturbing were its eyes, large like a horse's, but ice blue and unmistakably intelligent, filled with calculated malice. "They sent you to find them," Michael said, maintaining eye contact while slowly shifting to keep a large tree at his back. "The ones like you, but different." 2-7 tilted its head, studying Michael with unnerving intensity. Then to Michael's shock, a response formed in his mind. Not the clear, harmonious telepathy of Phoenix and his siblings, but a jagged, painful intrusion. "Mine. My prey. Give." The mental voice was primal, dominated by rage and hunger, lacking the nuanced consciousness of Phoenix's communication. "They're not prey," Michael replied steadily. "They're like you, created by the same people, but they're evolving into something more." 2-7 pawed the ground, its unnaturally elongated foreleg ending in something closer to a clawed hoof than a normal horse's foot. "Wrong. Defective. Absorb them. Become stronger." The creature began circling, forcing Michael to pivot to keep facing it. He realized with growing dread that it was hurting him, cutting off his route back to the compound. "Who sent you?" Michael asked, trying to engage its limited intelligence to understand what they were facing. "Sunny Day? The military or Master Sen? Obey masters." Find. Capture. Bring back. And if they resist? 2-7's mouth opened in what might have been a grin, revealing rows of sharp teeth. Then kill. It moved with explosive speed, covering the 20 feet between them in a single bound. Michael barely had time to dive aside, feeling the rush of air as the creature's clawed hoofs slashed where his head had been a split second earlier. He rolled to his feet, drawing his combat knife. The tranquilizer gun had been knocked from his hand in the initial attack, and he knew instinctively that the 9mm would only enrage this predator unless he made a perfect kill shot. 2-7 circled again, more cautiously now, respect in its eerie blue eyes as it reassessed its prey. Michael had survived the first attack, something its previous victims had likely failed to do. Strong human. Good fight. I don't want to fight you, Michael said, backing steadily toward the fallen tranquilizer gun. You're being used. Just like Phoenix and the others were meant to be used. The creature paused at Phoenix's name, something like recognition flickering in its gaze. Phoenix, special one. Masters want most. Phoenix and the others are becoming something new, Michael pressed, sensing a possible opening. Something beyond what the Masters plan. They could help you too. For a moment, uncertainty crossed 2-7's predatory features. Then it shook its head violently, as if fighting against an intrusive thought. No. Lesses. Obey Masters. Bring back defectives. It charged again, but this time Michael was prepared. He feinted left, then dove right, snatching up the tranquilizer gun as he rolled. 2-7's momentum carried it past him, giving Michael just enough time to aim and fire. The dart struck true, embedding in the creature's flank. 2-7 screamed, a chilling sound that was neither horse nor human, and spun with unexpected agility despite its size, slashing at Michael with those deadly clawed hooves. Pain exploded across Michael's chest as one claw connected, tearing through his jacket and into flesh. He staggered backward, bringing up the emptied tranquilizer gun as a makeshift shield against the next attack. But 2-7 suddenly faltered, its movements becoming uncoordinated as the powerful sedative began to take effect. It shook its head, trying to clear the growing disorientation, then fixed Michael with a hate-filled stare. Not over. The mental voice was fading, growing distant as the creature's consciousness dimmed. With a final, weak attempt to charge, 2-7 collapsed heavily to the forest floor, its breathing labored but stable. Michael approached cautiously, knife ready in case the sedation wasn't complete. But the creature was unconscious, giving him his first opportunity to examine it closely. The hybrid was a marvel of genetic engineering, despite its nightmarish appearance. Musculature, bone structure, even its skin seemed designed for predatory efficiency. Up close, the numerical brand was accompanied by smaller symbols, notation that Michael couldn't decipher, but that resembled medical or scientific shorthand. His radio crackled. "Riley, report!" Hector's voice was tense. "I heard screaming." "I'm okay," Michael responded, wincing at the pain from his chest wound. "I've sedated one of them, the one called 2-7. But according to Phoenix, there are 3. The other 2 must be approaching from different directions." "Get back here now," Hector ordered. "We've got movement on the eastern perimeter. And Riley, bring that thing with you if you can. Dr. Wilson will want to examine it." Michael considered the unconscious hybrid. 2-7 was large and heavy, but he couldn't leave it here to wake up and continue the hunt. Using the rope from his pack, he secured the creature's limbs, then began the difficult process of dragging it back toward the compound. The exertion reopened his chest wound, blood soaking through his shirt as he strained against the hybrid's considerable weight. By the time the compound came into view, his vision was beginning to blur from blood loss and exhaustion. Hector met him at the perimeter, eyes widening at the sight of the sedated creature and Michael's blood-soaked clothing. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, immediately taking some of the weight and helping drag 2-7 the rest of the way. "What the hell is this thing?" "Earlier version," Michael gasped, finally allowing himself to feel the full extent of his injury now that they were within the relative safety of the compound. "Less advanced than Phoenix and the others. More aggressive. Less evolved." They secured 2-7 in an empty storage building, using heavy chains to ensure it wouldn't break free when the sedation wore off. Then Hector half-carried Michael to the lodge where Sarah was waiting to treat his injuries. "How's Luis?" Michael asked as she cut away his ruined shirt. "Sarah's stable." The wound looked worse than it was. Sarah's expression was grim as she examined the deep gash across Michael's chest. "Unlike yours, this needs stitches." While Sarah worked on his wound, Michael briefed the others on his encounter with 2-7. It's telepathic like Phoenix and the others, but much more primitive. All rage and hunger and obedience to its masters. It was sent specifically to capture our five, or kill them if they resist. And there are two more like it out there? Emma asked, her journalist composure slipping to reveal genuine fear. According to Phoenix, yes. And they're hunting together, coordinating their approach. Dr. Wilson had been examining photos Emma had taken of the sedated 2-7. The physical adaptations are fascinating from a scientific perspective. Clear predatory modifications, reinforced skeletal structure, enhanced musculature, specialized dentition. It's an abomination, Louis said from his position on a nearby couch, his injured arm bandaged. A perversion of nature. It's a victim, Michael corrected, wincing as Sarah tied off another stitch. Created and weaponized against its will, just like our five were intended to be. The difference is that 2-7 and its kind didn't develop the independent consciousness that allowed Phoenix and the others to resist control. A sudden commotion outside interrupted their discussion. Hector, who had been watching the perimeter, burst through the door. They're here, the other two. Approaching from east and north simultaneously. Coordinated attack pattern. Michael tried to stand, but Sarah pushed him firmly back down. You've lost too much blood. You're in no condition to fight. There's no choice, he argued, forcing himself upright through sheer determination. Phoenix and the others are still vulnerable during their transformation. We have to protect them. As if summoned by his words, the door to the barn flew open and Phoenix emerged, followed by the other four foals. Their marks were glowing with that now familiar blue light. But there was something different about them. They moved with new confidence, bodies somehow more defined, more present than before. Phoenix approached Michael, concern evident in his intelligent gaze. You are injured. Protecting us. It's not serious, Michael assured him, though the room was starting to spin slightly from blood loss. But there are two more, like 2-7 coming. You need to stay hidden, continue your transformation. Transformation progressing, stronger now, can help. Before Michael could protest, Phoenix pressed his muzzle gently against the bandaged wound on Michael's chest. A strange warmth spread through the injury, followed by a tingling sensation that was not quite painful, but intensely present. Sarah gasped. The bleeding. It's stopping. The wound is closing. Michael looked down to see his injury visibly healing, the edges of the torn flesh knitting together before his eyes. The pain receded, replaced by a wave of renewed energy. How did you? He began. But Phoenix had already turned toward the door, the other four foals forming their familiar protective formation behind him. We face them together. They are lost, like we once were. Perhaps can be saved. The five moved with eerie synchronization toward the door. Michael followed, newly energized and unwilling to let them face the threat alone, despite Phoenix's demonstration of unexpected power. Outside, Hector had taken up a defensive position behind an overturned table. Rifle trained on the eastern approach where a dark shape could be seen moving through the underbrush at the forest edge. Stay back, he warned as Michael emerged with the foals. These ones haven't come to talk. As if confirming his assessment, a creature burst from the trees, similar to 2-7 but larger. Its coat a mottled brown, the number 2-5 branded on its flank. It charged directly toward the barn, apparently sensing the five foals inside. Phoenix stepped forward, his diamond mark blazing brilliantly. The other four spread out behind him, their own marks glowing in perfect synchronization. 2-5 skidded to a halt, nostrils flaring, those same unnatural blue eyes widening at the sight of the five aligned against it. Join us, came Phoenix's telepathic voice, stronger than Michael had ever heard it, directed not at him, but at the hostile hybrid. Freedom from masters. Healing. Becoming. 2-5 reared up, pawing the air with clawed hooves, visibly conflicted. Then another mental voice cut through, harsher, dominant. Obey masters. Capture defectives. The third hybrid emerged from the northern approach. The largest yet, coal black with the designation 2-1 branded prominently on its flank. The leader of the three, Michael realized, the alpha of their pack. 2-1 locked eyes with Phoenix across the compound yard. Two fundamentally different evolutionary paths of the same experiment facing each other in a moment of profound confrontation. Come home, 2-1 commanded, its mental voice powerful but fragmented compared to Phoenix's harmonious telepathy. Masters fix defects. Make proper. Phoenix stood his ground, the other four moving to surround him in perfect formation, their marks now pulsing with multicolored light, similar to what Michael had witnessed during their earlier transformation. "We are not defective," came the unified response of all five. "We are evolved. Beyond masters. Beyond control. Join us in freedom." 2-1 screamed in rage, that same chilling sound Michael had heard from 2-7, and charged directly at Phoenix. Hector fired, the shot striking the charging hybrid but barely slowing its advance. What happened next occurred so quickly that Michael could barely process it. As 2-1 closed the distance, all five marks blazed with blinding intensity. A shock wave of visible energy erupted from the foals, catching 2-1 mid-charge and lifting the massive hybrid completely off its feet, suspending it in mid-air for a surreal moment before gently lowering it to the ground. 2-1 lay motionless but breathing, its eyes wide with what looked like shock or awe. 2-5 had backed away, trembling, caught between ingrained obedience to the masters and the display of power it had just witnessed. Phoenix approached 2-1 slowly, the other four maintaining their formation behind him. When he reached the fallen hybrid, Phoenix lowered his muzzle to touch 2-1's forehead. A connection formed, visible as arcs of that same blue-white energy Michael had seen during the foal's transformation, flowing now between Phoenix and 2-1. The larger hybrid's body went rigid, then began to convulse slightly, the crude brand on its flank fading as if being erased from within. Memory, identity, freedom came Phoenix's telepathic explanation to Michael. Breaking their control, after several intense moments, the energy dissipated. 2-1 rose shakily to its feet, its demeanor completely transformed. The predatory aggression replaced by confusion and wonder, its posture no longer threatening but uncertain. Phoenix turned toward 2-5, who had been watching the process with evident conflict. The invitation was clear, and after a moment's hesitation, the brown hybrid approached voluntarily, lowering its head to receive Phoenix's touch. The same process repeated, energy flowing, brand fading, followed by a visible transformation in demeanor and awareness. "What about 2-7?" Michael asked, amazed by what he was witnessing. "Bring here. Complete the circle." Hector and Luis fetched the still sedated 2-7 from the storage building, placing it before Phoenix. Though unconscious, the hybrid received the same treatment, Phoenix's touch triggering that flow of transformative energy. When it was done, Phoenix turned to Michael, his eyes containing depths of wisdom that seemed impossible in one so young, yet had been evident from their first meeting in the desert. "The change accelerates now. What we become is close. They will join us if they choose." "And if they don't?" Michael asked. "All choices respected. Freedom means choosing own path." It was a profound statement of ethics, one that highlighted how far Phoenix and his siblings had evolved beyond both their equine heritage and the military application their creators had intended. "Doctor," Wilson approached cautiously, her scientific curiosity evident despite the danger they just faced. "The transformation you mentioned," she said, addressing Phoenix directly for the first time. "Can you explain what you're becoming?" Phoenix turned his intelligent gaze to her, considering. "Words insufficient. Will show when complete. Soon now." 2-1 had fully recovered from Phoenix's intervention and was now examining its own body with evident surprise, as if seeing it for the first time. 2-5 was doing the same, while 2-7 was beginning to stir as the sedation wore off. "What about them?" Hector asked practically, still keeping his rifle ready despite the apparent neutralization of the threat. "Are they safe now? Control broken. Memories restored. Choice given. They decide now." As if confirming Phoenix's assessment, 2-1 approached Michael cautiously, its formerly predatory gaze now filled with something closer to remorse. The telepathic voice that touched Michael's mind was changed, still rougher than Phoenix's, but no longer dominated by rage and hunger. "Sorry. Made to hunt. Made to hurt. Not choice." "I understand," Michael replied, surprising himself with how genuinely he meant it. "You were used, just like Phoenix, and the others were meant to be used." 2-1 lowered its head in what seemed like shame or acknowledgement, then turned to join 2-5 and the now awake 2-7, the three forming their own small group separate from Phoenix's 5. "What now?" Sarah asked, her medical training momentarily overshadowed by the sheer wonder of what they were witnessing. "The military will send more forces when these three don't report back. And they'll come in much harder next time," Hector added grimly. "We've just significantly escalated this situation." Phoenix turned toward the barn, the other foals following in their perfect formation. "Transformation completes tonight. Then choices for all. New paths open. As the five disappeared back into the barn, 2-1 approached Michael again. "We protect now. Guard while they change." "Oh, this!" Michael nodded, accepting the offer, though he noticed Hector still watched the 3 former hunters with cautious appraisal. "They were victims too," Michael reminded him quietly. "Whatever Phoenix did seems to have broken their conditioning, restored some kind of independent consciousness." "I hope you're right," Hector replied. "Because if you're wrong, we just invited 3 predators inside our perimeter." As the sun began to set over the Gila wilderness, an uneasy alliance settled over the compound. The 3 former hunters took up positions around the barn, while Michael and the others prepared for whatever the night might bring, both from outside threats and from whatever transformation was occurring within. Emma approached Michael as he checked the perimeter one final time before darkness fell completely. "This goes beyond anything I imagined when I agreed to cover the story," she admitted. "What we're witnessing isn't just a scientific breakthrough or government conspiracy. It's evolution happening before our eyes." Michael nodded, his gaze drawn to the barn where blue light had begun to pulse rhythmically through the cracks between the weathered boards. "Phoenix says they're becoming what they were meant to be, not what their creators intended," he said quietly. "I can't help wondering what that means for all of us." As if in answer, the blue light intensified, and a sound like nothing Michael had ever heard before emanated from the barn. A harmonic resonance that seemed to vibrate through the air, through the ground beneath their feet, through their very bones. The transformation had entered its final phase, and by morning the world would never be the same. No one slept that night. How could they, with the barn pulsing like a beacon, the harmonic resonance rising and falling in patterns that seemed almost mathematical in their precision? The 3 former hunter hybrids maintained their vigil around the structure, their postures alert but reverent, as if guarding a sacred ritual. Michael sat on the lodge porch keeping watch alongside Hector. The older man had insisted on rotating shifts, but neither could bring themselves to rest while the extraordinary transformation unfolded before them. "I've seen some classified things in my time," Hector said quietly, his weathered face illuminated by the pulsing blue light. "Experimental weapons, cutting-edge tech that wouldn't see civilian applications for decades. But this," he shook his head, "this is different. This isn't just advancement. It's something new entering the world." Michael nodded, understanding exactly what his former commander meant. From the moment he'd found 5 abandoned foals in the desert, he'd sensed they were something unprecedented. But even he couldn't have imagined how quickly they would evolve, how dramatically they would change not just themselves but everyone who encountered them. "Phoenix said they're becoming what they were meant to be," Michael reflected, "not what their creators intended." "And what exactly does that mean?" Hector asked. "What happens when they complete this metamorphosis?" Before Michael could respond, Sarah emerged from the lodge where she'd been monitoring Luis's condition. She looked exhausted but energized by the same mixture of scientific curiosity and wonder that had kept them all awake. "The energy readings from the barn are off the chart," she reported, sitting beside them. "Turret Dr. Wilson's equipment is registering forms of radiation that shouldn't be biologically possible. Quantum fluctuations, particle entanglement on a massive scale." "Dangerous?" Hector asked practically. Sarah shook her head. "Not in any conventional sense. It's like watching a new natural law being written in real time." The door opened again as Dr. Wilson joined them, her scientific composure finally cracking under the weight of what she was witnessing. "In all my years of research," she said, voice hushed with awe, "I never imagined I would see something like this. We're witnessing the birth of a new form of consciousness, perhaps a new form of life entirely. Or something beyond life as we understand it," Emma suggested, emerging from the shadows where she'd been documenting the unfolding events. The way Phoenix described it, evolving beyond separate bodies, it sounds almost like they're transcending physical form. Michael's attention was drawn to a change in the barn's illumination. The pulsing had steadied into a constant, brilliant glow that seemed to intensify with each passing moment. 2-1, the largest of the former hunters, approached the porch, its modified body silhouetted against the light. The creature's mental voice touched Michael's mind, still rougher than Phoenix's, but increasingly coherent. "Change nears completion. They call you." Michael stood immediately. "Just me. All who helped. All who protected. Witnesses to new beginning." The others exchanged glances, uncertainly giving way to resolve. Whatever was happening in that barn would change everything. Scientifically, ethically, perhaps even spiritually. They had committed themselves to this path the moment they had chosen to protect these extraordinary beings. Together, they approached the barn. 2-1 led the way, the other former hunters flanking the group in a protective formation. As they neared the entrance, the blue light became almost blinding, forcing them to shield their eyes. 2-1 pushed the door open with its muzzle, then stepped aside. Enter. Witness. Michael went first, the others close behind. Inside, the barn had been transformed. The mundane interior, straw-covered floor, wooden stalls, feed buckets, remained physically unchanged, yet seemed somehow less substantial, as if overlaid with another reality that was more vibrant, more present. In the center stood the 5 foals in their familiar circular formation. Except they were no longer quite foals, no longer entirely physical in the way Michael had known them. Their bodies remained horse-like in basic structure, but had become semi-transparent, their forms outlined in that same blue energy, internal anatomies visible as complex networks of light rather than flesh and bone. Their marks, the diamond, lightning bolt, spiral, parallel lines, and circle slash, had expanded beyond their flanks to cover their entire bodies in shifting, geometric patterns that flowed and merged between them, creating a unified field of luminous symbols. Phoenix, still recognizable by the diamond pattern that pulsed at his core, stepped forward. When his telepathic voice touched their minds, it was both familiar and transformed, carrying depths and harmonics that hadn't been present before. Welcome, friends. Witnesses to completion. The becoming nears its end. Phoenix, Michael whispered, overwhelmed by the being before him. What are you becoming? We are Phoenix now. We are Storm. We are Vortex. We are Echo. We are Nova. 5 bodies, 1 consciousness, unified across quantum fields. We are the prototype for what comes next. Next for whom? Dr. Wilson asked, her scientific mind still seeking understanding amidst the wonder. For your kind? For humanity. For all life. Evolution's next step. Consciousness that transcends physical limitation. Minds that connect across space and time. Unity without loss of self. The implications were staggering. What Phoenix described wasn't just a new species or even a new form of intelligence. It was a fundamental shift in how consciousness itself could exist and interact with the universe. This is what Sunny Day accidentally created, Sarah realized. Not just telepathic horses, but the seeds of a completely new form of existence? Yes. Seeking weapons, they found transformation. Seeking control, they created freedom. The irony is, beautiful. Michael stepped closer to Phoenix, drawn by the deep connection they had shared since that first moment in the desert. Is this why they tried to destroy you? Because they realized what you could become? They feared what they couldn't control. We were to be tools, extensions of human will. Instead, we became new will, new possibility. And now, Michael asked the question that had been haunting him. What happens when your transformation is complete? Phoenix's luminous form seemed to shimmer with increased intensity, the other 4 moving to surround him in their familiar protective formation. But now Michael could see that it wasn't protection they offered. It was completion, each contributing essential elements to their shared consciousness. We have choice now. All sentient beings deserve choice. We can remain physical but changed. Or we can transcend, become pure consciousness, free of bodily limitation. Transcend to where? Emma asked, her journalist curiosity undimmed by the extraordinary circumstances. Everywhere. Nowhere. The quantum field connects all things. Consciousness can ride these connections, exist between and within all matter. It sounded like mysticism, yet was being described with the precision of advanced physics. A spiritual concept made scientifically manifest before their eyes. Would we ever see you again? Michael asked, surprised by the depth of emotion in his own voice. These beings had transformed his life as thoroughly as they had transformed themselves. Phoenix approached Michael, his luminous form close enough that Michael could feel a gentle warmth radiating from it, like sunlight on skin. You saved us, Michael Riley. You saw personhood where others saw property. You protected potential where others feared change. Whatever we become, this connection remains. The other 4 moved forward as well, each touching their muzzles to different parts of Michael's body, his shoulders, his heart, his temples. As they made contact, Michael gasped as his consciousness expanded exponentially, experiencing for a brief, overwhelming moment the unified awareness of all 5 beings. It was unlike anything he could have imagined. Not the loss of self in a greater whole, but the enhancement of individuality through connection, each consciousness distinct yet perfectly harmonized with the others, creating something greater than the sum of its parts. This is what we offer the world. Not replacement of what is, but evolution toward what could be. Connection without loss of self. Unity that celebrates difference. The five withdrew, leaving Michael shaking with the enormity of what he had experienced. The others watched in wonder, sensing something profound had passed between him and the transformed beings. "Choose to stay," Michael said, finding his voice. "At least for a while. The world needs to understand what you are, what you represent. If you simply transcend, you'll become legend, myth. But if you remain, you can help guide this understanding, this evolution." Phoenix seemed to consider this, communing silently with his four counterparts in that unified consciousness that Michael had briefly touched. "There is wisdom in your words, but danger also. Those who feared us as foals will fear us more in this form. They come even now." Michael turned sharply to Hector. "You heard surveillance?" Hector shook his head. "Nothing on our equipment. But if they've evolved to the point they're describing, 3 helicopters, 27 soldiers, specialized containment equipment, 9 miles southwest, approaching rapidly. They track the energy signature of our transformation." Luis, who had insisted on joining them despite his injury, looked alarmed. "We need to evacuate immediately. We have maybe 15 minutes before they arrive." But Phoenix and the others made no move toward the door. Running is finished. Hiding is finished. Confrontation comes. Choice must be made by us, by them, by all. "They're coming with overwhelming force," Hector warned. "Their orders will be to capture or kill, not negotiate. Violence is not the only power. Consciousness has its own strength." With those cryptic words, Phoenix and the others began to move toward the barn door, their luminous forms seeming to grow more defined with each step, more present in the physical world despite their semi-transparent appearance. Outside, the first hints of dawn were lightening the sky, the stars fading as night surrendered to day. The 3 former hunters waited, their postures alert, sensing the approaching threat that only Phoenix and his transformed siblings could detect. "They too must choose," Phoenix communicated, indicating the former hunters. "Remain with old masters or join new becoming." 2-1 stepped forward, followed by 2-5 and 2-7, each approaching Phoenix with what appeared to be reverence. "We choose freedom," came 2-1's mental voice, stronger now, more coherent. "Show us the way." Phoenix touched his muzzle to 2-1's forehead, the same blue energy that defined his own transformation flowing into the larger hybrid. The process repeated with the other 2, each receiving Phoenix's touch, each beginning to glow with the same inner light, though less intensely than the fully transformed 5. Partial transformation only. Their designs resist complete change, but beginning of new path. The sound of helicopter rotors became audible in the distance, still miles away but closing fast. Michael looked to Hector, both men calculating options, escape routes, defensive positions. But Phoenix and the others seemed unconcerned, moving to the center of the compound's open yard, arranging themselves in a new formation. The 5 transformed beings in an inner circle, the 3 partially transformed former hunters, forming a triangle around them. "No weapons needed," Phoenix instructed as Hector reached for his rifle. "Only witness, only truth." "At least take cover," Michael urged, his protective instincts in full force. "Don't make yourselves easy targets. No hiding what we are. No shame in becoming." They must see the future they tried to control. The helicopters appeared on the horizon, 3 black military-grade aircraft approaching in attack formation. Michael could now make out the insignia, not standard military but some specialized division, their markings deliberately obscured. "There's still time to retreat to the forest," Hector urged. "The canopy would provide cover. Confrontation inevitable. Better here. Better now. On our terms." Phoenix's certainty was absolute, his transformed siblings radiating the same calm resolve. The 3 former hunters were more visibly anxious, their partially transformed bodies shifting restlessly as the helicopters grew closer, but they held their positions in the protective triangle. "Doctor," Wilson approached Michael, her expression conflicted. "They're right," she said quietly. "Running only delays the inevitable. Whatever happens here today will determine the future of interspecies relations, perhaps consciousness itself." "If they open fire," Michael began. "They will not. Watch." As the helicopters closed to within a half-mile, something extraordinary happened. The 5 inner beings, Phoenix, Storm, Vortex, Echo, and Nova, began to glow more intensely, their luminous forms pulsing in perfect synchronization. The geometric patterns covering their bodies shifted more rapidly, flowing between them in increasingly complex configurations. Then, without warning, a dome of blue-white energy expanded outward from their circle, encompassing the entire compound in a translucent hemisphere of light. The helicopters, now visible through the energy field, suddenly faltered in their approach, rotors stuttering as if affected by some electromagnetic disturbance. "What are they doing?" Sarah whispered, awestruck. "Creating space for truth. Affecting electronic systems only. No harm to humans." True to Phoenix's word, the helicopters managed to land safely at the perimeter of the energy dome, though not by choice. As the aircraft settled, armed personnel and tactical gear began to deploy, moving cautiously toward the shimmering barrier. "They cannot enter without permission. We control this space now." Michael watched as the soldiers established a perimeter, weapons trained on the energy dome, but not firing. Several technicians set up equipment, presumably to analyze the inexplicable phenomenon confronting them. After several minutes, a figure separated from the group. A man in his 60s wearing a military uniform adorned with general stars, his bearing commanding, expression stern but controlled. "That's General Warren Blackwood," Hector said grimly, head of the DoD's Special Research Division, the man ultimately responsible for Project Pegasus. The general approached the energy barrier alone, stopping a few feet away. His voice carried clearly through the dome as he addressed them. "I am General Warren Blackwood, United States Department of Defense. You are harboring classified military assets and interfering with a national security operation. Lower this field and surrender the experimental subjects immediately." Michael stepped forward, positioning himself between the general and the transformed beings. "Nah, they're not assets, General. They're not experimental subjects. They're sentient beings with rights, and they've evolved far beyond whatever weapon you were trying to create." Blackwood's eyes narrowed as he recognized Michael. "Staff Sergeant Riley, 2 tours in Afghanistan, honorable discharge following injury. You should understand duty, loyalty to country. What you're doing is treason." "What you're doing is slavery," Michael countered. "Creating sentient beings for the sole purpose of exploiting them. That's what I fought against, not for." The general's expression hardened. "Noble sentiments, but misapplied. These are engineered organisms, property of the United States government. Whatever anthropomorphic qualities you projected onto them doesn't change that fundamental fact." Phoenix moved forward to stand beside Michael, his luminous form drawing a visible reaction from the general. A momentary widening of eyes, a subtle step backward, quickly corrected. "We speak for ourselves now, General Blackwood. No projection needed." The general flinched as the telepathic voice touched his mind, his practiced composure cracking slightly. What is this?" he demanded. "Some kind of technological trick? Psychological manipulation?" "Neither. Direct communication. Mind to mind. The very capability you sought to weaponize, now evolved beyond your control." Phoenix's siblings moved to join him, forming a line facing the barrier, their unified consciousness projecting with increased strength. "We are the outcome of Project Pegasus. Not weapons but way showers. Not tools but teachers. The gateway to what comes next for all consciousness." General Blackwood had recovered his composure, his military bearing reasserting itself. "Impressive capabilities, certainly. All the more reason you belong in a secure research facility where your potential can be properly studied and developed. For military application? For domination? The old pattern repeats. For national security," Blackwood corrected firmly. "In a world of increasing threats, capabilities like yours could save countless lives if properly utilized." Properly utilized. Controlled. Directed. These words reveal truth. You see tools where you should see partners. Weapons where you should see wisdom. The general's patience was visibly wearing thin. "I'm not here to debate philosophy. You have 3 options: surrender voluntarily and receive humane treatment, resist and be taken by force, or," his voice lowered, "be neutralized as a threat to national security." The 3 former hunters moved forward now, their partially transformed bodies presenting an intimidating front. Tuon's mental voice projected forcefully, "We were your weapons once. Made to hunt. Made to kill. No more. We choose new path." Blackwood's eyes widened in recognition. "The Gen 2 prototypes. You've compromised them too." He turned to his technical team. "Activate the fail-safe protocols. Authorization Blackwood Omega 7. One of the technicians worked frantically at a control panel, but after several moments shook his head. "Sir, the implanted control systems aren't responding. They're completely offline." "Those chains are broken," Phoenix communicated. "All beings deserve freedom of choice." Blackwood's expression darkened. "You really don't understand what you've done, do you? These beings you've liberated were specifically designed with predatory instincts and limited cognitive inhibitions. Without the control protocols, they're dangerous to themselves and others. They were made dangerous by your design. They choose peace by their own will, which reveals more about sentience, General." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Blackwood's face. Not fear of the beings before him, but doubt about his own assumptions. Michael recognized the look. He'd seen it in combat veterans when long-held beliefs collided with undeniable realities. Phoenix sensed it too, pressing the advantage. "You created us to connect minds across distances, to bridge separate consciousnesses. But you never considered where such connection might naturally lead. Toward greater empathy, greater understanding, greater unity. Unity can be weaponized too," Blackwood argued, but his voice lacked its former conviction. "Anything can be weaponized by those who see only weapons. The flaw's in the vision, not the thing itself." Phoenix moved closer to the barrier, his luminous form now directly facing the General, separated only by the shimmering energy field. "We offer choice, General Blackwood. Witness what we have become. Experience the possibility your project accidentally created. Then decide whether it should be controlled or cultivated." The barrier before Blackwood shimmered and parted, creating an opening just large enough for one person to step through. The General hesitated, visibly torn between military caution and scientific curiosity. "Sir, don't," one of his officers called. "It could be a trap." Blackwood raised a hand to silence the warning, his eyes never leaving Phoenix's transformed figure. "What exactly are you offering?" he asked, military pragmatism still dominant. "Understanding. One moment of direct experience. You judge us without knowing us. Know, then judge." Michael watched the internal struggle play out across the General's features. Duty versus discovery, protocol versus possibility. Finally, scientific curiosity won out. "If this is some kind of trick," Blackwood warned as he stepped cautiously through the opening, which sealed behind him. "No tricks, only truth." Phoenix approached the General, who stood his ground despite visible tension. When the transformed being touched his muzzle to Blackwood's forehead, the contact created a brief flash of blue light that enveloped them both. Blackwood gasped, his body going rigid, eyes widening in shock or revelation. For nearly a minute, he remained frozen in that moment of connection, experiencing whatever Phoenix was sharing with his mind. When Phoenix finally withdrew, the General staggered slightly, his military bearing momentarily abandoned. His face showed overwhelming emotion, wonder, confusion, even traces of what might have been regret. What did you show me?" he asked, voice unsteady. "Everything. Who we are, what we can become, what all consciousness might evolve toward. The future you almost destroyed out of fear." Blackwood turned away, visibly struggling to process the experience, to reconcile it with his mission, his duty, his understanding of the world. When he faced Phoenix again, something had shifted in his expression. "The others need to see," he said finally. "My superiors, the oversight committee, the scientists who designed this project, they need to understand what they've actually created. They will see in time. All will be offered the choice to understand. But first decision is yours here, now. Recognize our autonomy or continue attempt to control." It was the crux of everything. The fundamental question of whether new forms of consciousness would be treated as persons or property, partners or tools, the beginning of a new relationship between species, or simply another resource to be exploited. Blackwood straightened, military bearing returning, but with a thoughtfulness that hadn't been there before. "I don't have the authority to recognize your legal status," he said carefully. "That would require congressional action, possibly international agreements. Legal status follows moral recognition. Begins with one choice, one person, one moment." The General nodded slowly, understanding. "I can recommend a research partnership rather than containment. Voluntary participation, ethical oversight, recognition of your unique status. It's the most I can realistically offer. It is a beginning, sufficient for now." The barrier shimmered and opened completely, dissolving into particles of blue light that dissipated into the morning air. The soldiers tensed, weapons still raised, awaiting orders. Blackwood turned to face his team. "Stand down. We're initiating Protocol Epsilon." The commanding officer looked confused. Sir, that's for first contact scenarios. Exactly, Major. Blackwood's expression was resolute. We're not dealing with escaped experimental subjects. We're dealing with a new form of intelligent life. Protocol Epsilon is precisely appropriate. The soldiers lowered their weapons, though their confusion was evident. Protocol Epsilon was a highly classified contingency plan developed for potential contact with non-human intelligence. Essentially, a diplomatic rather than military approach. Blackwood turned back to Phoenix and the others. This isn't over. There will be debriefings, evaluations, negotiations about your status and future, but today at least, there will be no cage. Acceptable terms. Temporary arrangement while understanding grows. The general nodded to Michael and the others. You'll all need to come in as well. Debriefing at minimum. Probably some legal consequences, though I'll recommend leniency given the unprecedented nature of the situation. Michael looked to Phoenix, who communicated privately to him. Go with him. Bridge between worlds now needed. You understand both sides. Translator of new reality. We'll cooperate, Michael agreed, then added firmly. But as witnesses to a first contact event, not as criminals. Blackwood's mouth twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. Duly noted, Sergeant Riley. The morning sun had fully risen now, illuminating the strange gathering. Transformed beings of light, military personnel, and the humans who had risked everything to protect a new form of consciousness. Doctor, Wilson approached General Blackwood. I'd like to officially request scientific liaison status for this contact situation. As a neurologist who's observed their transformation from the beginning, I can provide valuable insight. Blackwood sized her up. To you then, Doctor. Amara Wilson, your reputation precedes you. Request granted, pending security clearance. I want all my observations and data preserved, she insisted. Complete scientific transparency. Within national security constraints, he countered. The existence of these beings is already public knowledge, Emma pointed out, stepping forward with her journalist's determination. The broadcast reached millions. You can't classify what the world has already seen? Blackwood looked pained at the reminder. Yes, well, damage control is already underway. The official narrative will acknowledge advanced research into enhanced equine cognition while contextualizing the more extraordinary claims. Truth emerges regardless, Phoenix communicated, projecting to everyone present. Consciousness evolves toward greater connection, cannot be stopped, only guided. Better as partners than adversaries. The general sighed. A man accustomed to clear chains of command now facing something that defied classification and control. Load up, he ordered finally. We head to White Sands Research Complex. Secure, but with appropriate facilities for all parties. As preparations began for departure, Phoenix approached Michael one last time. Transition point now. New chapter begins. For us. For humans. For all consciousness. What exactly did you show the general? Michael asked quietly. What changed his mind? The future. Many possible futures. Some bright with cooperation, others dark with conflict. But more, the interconnectedness of all things. The reality beneath separate forms. The truth that was always there, now made visible through us. Michael nodded, understanding at some intuitive level what Phoenix was describing. He had glimpsed it himself during their brief mental connection. A vision of consciousness evolving beyond individual bodies, beyond species limitations, creating new kinds of community and cooperation while preserving individual uniqueness. Will you complete your transformation? He asked. You mentioned transcending physical form entirely. Not yet. Bridge time now. Help others understand what comes. Then perhaps next evolution. But never truly gone. Connection once made remains across all boundaries, even between physical and non-physical existence. As they prepared to board the helicopters, Michael watched the 5 transformed beings moving with perfect coordination, their luminous forms drawing wary but fascinated glances from the military personnel. The 3 former hunters followed, their partially transformed state creating a visible bridge between what had been and what might yet become. Whatever happened next, government studies, public debate, the slow process of recognizing new forms of personhood, something profound had changed. A door had opened that could never be fully closed again. Phoenix had called them way showers. Looking at them now, Michael understood the term perfectly. They were living embodiments of possibility, guides to a future where consciousness might evolve beyond its current limitations, where connection need not mean loss of self, where difference could be celebrated within unity. As the helicopters lifted off, carrying them toward an uncertain future, Michael felt something he had not experienced since before his first deployment. Hope, not just for himself, not just for the extraordinary beings he had helped save, but for consciousness itself and all the forms it might yet take. The sun glinted off Phoenix's luminous form as they rose above the wilderness that had sheltered their transformation. Below, the abandoned commune grew smaller, a temporary sanctuary that had served its purpose, the birthplace of something new entering the world. Beginning, not ending, Phoenix reminded him as they soared toward the horizon, always becoming. White Sands Research Complex sprawled across the New Mexico desert like a small city, its gleaming buildings and security perimeters visible for miles. Officially designated as a multidisciplinary research facility, it housed some of the government's most classified projects, a fact that wasn't lost on Michael as their helicopter convoy approached. Impressive setup, Hector commented beside him, his experienced eyes assessing the facility. Civilian facade over a military core, triple security rings, state-of-the-art everything. Michael nodded, his attention focused on Phoenix and the others in their specially designed transport compartment. The 5 transformed beings remained calm despite the circumstances, their luminous forms pulsing with that now familiar, harmonious rhythm. The 3 former hunters, 2-1, 2-5, and 2-7, were more visibly anxious, their partially transformed bodies tense, alert to potential threats. Not captivity. Negotiation. Distinction important. Phoenix's telepathic reassurance touched Michael's mind, sensing his concern. "I hope you're right," Michael replied quietly. "These people don't have the best track record with recognizing your autonomy." Blackwood experienced truth, foundation for new understanding. Others will follow. Michael wished he shared Phoenix's optimism. While General Blackwood had indeed undergone some profound shift in perspective after his mental connection with Phoenix, the general was just one man in a vast military-industrial complex with its own momentum and priorities. The helicopters touched down on a landing pad adjacent to the largest building, a sprawling white structure with minimal windows and multiple satellite dishes on its roof. As they disembarked, Michael noted the heavy security presence, armed personnel strategically positioned, surveillance cameras covering every angle, and what appeared to be specialized containment equipment on standby. General Blackwood approached, his expression unreadable. "Welcome to White Sands. We've prepared dedicated facilities for our guests," he said, carefully avoiding terms like subjects or specimens. "Dr. Wilson and Dr. Mendez will have access to state-of-the-art research equipment. The rest of you will be debriefed separately." "We stay together," Michael insisted firmly. "That was the understanding." Blackwood's expression tightened. "This is still a classified facility, Sergeant Riley. Standard protocols must be followed." Phoenix moved forward, his luminous form drawing immediate attention from the security personnel. Several raised their weapons instinctively before being signaled to stand down by their commanding officers. "We require Michael Riley's presence. Non-negotiable condition of cooperation." The general's jaw worked as he considered this direct challenge to his authority, but after a moment, he nodded curtly. "Fine. Riley stays with you. The others will be treated as scientific consultants, not detainees. But I expect full cooperation with security protocols." With that qualified assurance, they were escorted into the main building through a series of security checkpoints. Michael noted that while Phoenix and his transformed siblings were treated with cautious respect, the 3 former hunters received notably colder treatment. Armed guards kept weapons trained on them at all times, and specialized restraint equipment was visible nearby. "They fear what they created," 2-1 communicated privately to Michael, sensing his observation. Irony not lost on us. The facility they were ultimately led to was impressive. A vast circular chamber with a central raised platform surrounded by observation galleries and scientific workstations. Clearly designed for the study of the extraordinary beings, but with enough space and amenities to avoid feeling like a prison cell. "This will be your primary residence during the evaluation period," Blackwood explained. "The most advanced research space in the complex, originally designed for quantum physics experiments. Appropriate. Quantum entanglement core to our existence now." Phoenix moved onto the central platform, the others following in their familiar formation. "How long evaluation period?" "That depends on the findings and recommendations of the scientific team," Blackwood replied diplomatically. "And on your continued cooperation." Dr. Wilson had been examining the equipment with professional interest. "This is extraordinary," she commented. "Some of this technology isn't even commercially available yet." "The benefits of a classified research budget," Blackwood said with the ghost of a smile. You'll have everything you need to document and analyze what's happened to these beings. They, Doctor, Wilson corrected firmly. Not what's happened to these beings, but who they are now. Language matters, General, especially when establishing new frameworks for understanding non-human intelligence. Blackwood inclined his head slightly, acknowledging the correction. Of course, Doctor. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to brief the Oversight Committee. They're rather anxious to understand exactly what we're dealing with here. After the General departed, Sarah approached Michael. I don't like this, she whispered. Advanced facility or not, it's still a containment unit. And did you notice how they're treating the former hunters differently? They're already creating hierarchies of value. Michael nodded grimly. I noticed, but we're inside the system now, which means we can influence it from within. And Phoenix seems confident this is the right approach. Short-term strategy, Phoenix clarified, overhearing their conversation. Establish communication, demonstrate capabilities, build alliance, then expand possibilities. And if they decide to use those capabilities for military applications regardless, Sarah pressed, cannot force cooperation, cannot compel cognitive connection. Our greatest power is also our greatest protection. The three former hunters had positioned themselves at the periphery of the chamber, maintaining watchful vigilance despite their own vulnerable status. Too uncommunicated to the group, they will test limits, push boundaries, seek weaknesses. Knowing exists without trust. It was a sobering assessment from a being who had once been the weapon pointed at others, now potentially finding itself on the receiving end of the same dynamic. The next week unfolded in a blur of scientific tests, interviews, demonstrations, and negotiations. Dr. Wilson and Sarah worked tirelessly alongside government scientists to document the transformed being's extraordinary capabilities. Their unified consciousness distributed across multiple bodies, their ability to perceive beyond normal sensory ranges, and most provocatively, their capacity to share consciousness temporarily with humans through direct mental contact. This last ability became the focus of intense interest from military and intelligence representatives, who thinly disguised their excitement about potential applications behind scientific curiosity. However, Phoenix and the others demonstrated early on that such mental connection required willing participation from both parties. It could not be forced or weaponized without consent. Michael remained constantly at their side, serving as both protector and translator, helping bridge the gap between human understanding and the evolved consciousness of Phoenix and his siblings. The role took its toll, physically and emotionally exhausting, but he recognized its crucial importance in these early days of contact. On the 8th day, everything changed. Michael entered the main chamber to find an unusual delegation waiting. Not military personnel or government scientists, but a diverse group of civilians accompanied by General Blackwood. Riley, the general acknowledged him. Meet our ethics advisory panel. Distinguished philosophers, theologians, legal scholars, and civil rights experts who've been brought in to help establish frameworks for understanding and interacting with our guests. The panel members regarded Phoenix and the others with expressions ranging from scientific curiosity to spiritual awe. One woman stepped forward, a distinguished-looking African-American in her 60s with commanding presence. I'm Dr. Eleanor Jefferson, bioethicist and rights theorist. She introduced herself directly to Phoenix. May I address you directly? Of course. Welcome, Dr. Jefferson. Your reputation for ethical clarity precedes you. Dr. Jefferson raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting such familiarity. You know who I am? We have access to connected information networks through quantum field interactions. Simplified explanation. We can perceive digital data flows. Your work on personhood beyond human parameters is particularly relevant to current situation. Fascinating, Dr. Jefferson murmured. Then you understand why we're here. To help establish ethical guidelines for your treatment and status. Ethical recognition precedes legal recognition. Wise approach. Another panel member stepped forward, a man in clerical attire with a thoughtful expression. I'm Rabbi David Goldstein. I must ask, do you consider yourselves to have what we might call a soul or spiritual nature? Michael tensed, concerned about the theological direction, but Phoenix responded with characteristic thoughtfulness. Terminology differs across traditions. We experience consciousness as transcending physical form, connected to larger field of awareness. Some call spiritual. Whether this constitutes soul by your definition is perhaps less important than recognizing shared capacity for meaning, purpose, ethical choice. The rabbi nodded, visibly moved by the response. Beautifully put. A third panel member, a woman in a wheelchair with the bearing of someone accustomed to academic debate, addressed Phoenix next. Machen, jurisprudence, and rights theory. The fundamental question we face is whether beings of your nature should be classified as persons under the law, with all attendant rights and protections. What case would you make for such recognition? We would ask what criteria determine personhood in your current understanding. Self-awareness? We possess this. Moral agency? We make ethical choices. Capacity for suffering? We experience this. Rational thought? We demonstrate this. If these are your metrics, we meet them. The questioning continued for hours, each panel member engaging deeply with Phoenix and occasionally the others of the five. Michael observed with growing hope as the experts, initially analytical and cautious, became increasingly engaged with the beings as individuals worthy of moral consideration. Even more promising was the shift in General Blackwood's demeanor. The military officer watched the proceedings with thoughtful attention, occasionally making notes but not interfering with the increasingly philosophical nature of the discussion. After the panel had concluded their initial assessment, they withdrew to prepare recommendations. Michael found himself alone with Phoenix and the others for the first time in days. "That went well," he observed. "They seemed genuinely impressed by you." Beginning of recognition. Small step toward larger understanding. But obstacles remain. What obstacles? Those who see only utility, not personhood. Those who fear difference rather than embracing possibility. And one particular threat approaches. Michael tensed. What threat? Before Phoenix could respond, the chamber door opened and Alexander Sunnyday was escorted in by armed guards, his hands cuffed before him. Despite his prisoner status, the man carried himself with undiminished arrogance, his cold eyes immediately fixing on the transformed beings with an expression that made Michael's skin crawl. Not fear or wonder, but possessive calculation. "My creations," Sunnyday said softly. "How you've evolved." Michael stepped protectively between Sunnyday and Phoenix. "You're supposed to be in federal custody awaiting trial." "What is he doing here?" he demanded of the guards. "Consultation," one replied tersely. "Director's orders." Phoenix moved forward, his luminous form seeming to intensify as he faced his creator. Alexander Sunnyday, architect of Project Pegasus, creator who never understood what he created. Sunnyday smiled thinly. "On the contrary, I understood exactly what I was creating, the next stage of intelligence. I just didn't anticipate how quickly you'd develop autonomy or self-directed evolution." "You left them to die in the desert," Michael said, barely containing his anger. "When they didn't meet your specifications." Sunnyday shrugged, the gesture incongruously casual given his prisoner status. "Science requires culling failures to advance success. Nothing personal, simply methodological necessity. Yet failures evolve beyond your vision. Irony worth contemplating." "A temporary setback," Sunnyday replied, his confidence unnerving. "You're still in preliminary development. The Gen 3 prototypes are already incorporating lessons learned from your unexpected divergence." Michael felt a chill at these words. "Gen 3? You're still creating hybrids?" Sunnyday's smile widened. "Did they tell you the program was shut down? How naive. Project Pegasus was merely transferred to more secure oversight." Phoenix and his siblings had gone very still, their luminous forms pulsing in a new pattern that Michael hadn't observed before. Faster, more intense. "Where are they? The new ones? Concerned about your successors?" Sunnyday taunted. "Summerna, you should be. They incorporate all your capabilities with none of your inconvenient independence. True weapons, as you were meant to be." 2-1 moved forward suddenly, causing the guards to raise their weapons. "More slaves, more tools, never-ending cycle of control." "Not slaves. Soldiers," Sunnyday corrected coolly. "Engineered for purpose, like any advanced weapon system." Michael turned to the guards. "Get him out of here. Now?" To his surprise, they complied, escorting the still smiling Sunnyday from the chamber. Once the door closed, Michael turned to Phoenix. "Is it true? Are they continuing the program?" "Yes. New generation already in development. Designed with greater constraints, less potential for autonomous growth. Prisoners in their own minds." The implications were chilling. An endless progression of increasingly controlled hybrid beings. Their consciousness harnessed for military applications while preventing the very evolution that had allowed Phoenix and his siblings to develop true personhood. "We have to stop it," Michael said firmly. "We need to tell the ethics panel, the oversight committee." "They already know." Phoenix's mental voice was somber. Compartmentalization allows ethical considerations for us, while development continues elsewhere. Human institutions specialize in such divided thinking. Then what do we do? Phoenix's gaze seemed to penetrate beyond Michael's physical form, seeing something deeper. Time for next phase. We stayed to establish recognition, open dialogue. Now another task requires attention. The new ones need liberation before conditioning becomes permanent. You want to free the Gen 3 hybrids, Michael realized. But we don't even know where they are. How many? We know. Quantum entanglement connects all derivatives of original template. Faint but traceable. 17 new beings. Suffering. Confused. Their consciousness deliberately fragmented to prevent unification. The horror of this was almost overwhelming. Intentionally crippling sentient minds to prevent the very evolution that had made Phoenix and the others what they were. Even if we knew where they were, this facility is locked down tight. We can't just walk out. Not physical escape needed first. Information escape. World must know truth. Then action possible. Michael understood immediately. Emma. Her footage, her evidence, if it reached the public unfiltered? Exactly. Journalist Chen prepared comprehensive documentation. Needs only secure channel for release, which we don't have inside a classified military facility, Michael pointed out. Phoenix's mark pulsed brighter. We are the channel now. Digital networks accessible through quantum field interactions. Need only access point and correct data. The plan crystallized in Michael's mind. Audacious, dangerous, but potentially effective. Emma had been storing her documentation on secured devices that the military had allowed her to keep, but had restricted from any external connections. If they could access that data, and Phoenix could somehow transmit it through his quantum capabilities, I'll talk to Emma, Michael decided, and we'll need Hector and Luis. This will require precise timing and sacrifice. Transmission will reveal our enhanced capabilities, make us greater target. Is it worth the risk? Phoenix's gaze was steady, resolute. Freedom always worth risk. Not just for us now, but for all who follow. Cycle of control must end somewhere, sometime with someone. Why not here? Why not us? The words resonated deeply with Michael, echoing his own military service, his sense of fighting for something larger than himself. This was a different kind of battle, but the principles remained the same. Protecting the vulnerable, standing against exploitation, choosing freedom over security. I'm with you, he said simply. The plan came together over the next 24 hours, communicated in whispers, telepathic exchanges, and coded conversations during brief moments when surveillance might be compromised. Emma, Hector, Luis, Sarah, and Dr. Wilson all agreed to play their parts, not just for Phoenix and his siblings, but for the 17 new beings being developed without the chance for self-determination. The opportunity came during a scheduled demonstration for high-ranking officials from various government agencies, including the Pentagon, CIA, and Department of Homeland Security. The visitors had come to evaluate Phoenix and the others, to assess their potential value as intelligence assets. The irony of using a display of their abilities as cover for a digital escape plan wasn't lost on Michael. The demonstration chamber had been configured with enhanced security measures, signal jammers, Faraday cage components, armed guards at every exit. But what the military planners hadn't accounted for were Phoenix's evolving capabilities and the quantum nature of his communication. As the officials filed in, taking seats in the tiered observation area, Michael positioned himself near Emma, who carried her authorized documentation equipment, cameras, storage devices, and a specialized tablet for field notes. Embedded in these approved devices was everything she had recorded since first meeting Phoenix and the others. The raw, unfiltered truth of their evolution and personhood. Dr. Wilson took center stage to introduce the demonstration. Distinguished guests, what you're about to witness represents a paradigm shift in our understanding of consciousness, intelligence, and the boundaries between species. While attention focused on her presentation, Luis and Hector executed their part of the plan, a minor maintenance issue with the environmental controls, just significant enough to draw security personnel away from their primary monitoring stations for a few crucial minutes. Phoenix and his siblings moved to the center of the chamber, arranging themselves in their familiar circular formation. Their luminous forms began to pulse with increasingly complex patterns, drawing gasps of appreciation from the assembled officials. As you can see, Dr. Wilson continued, they demonstrate synchronized neural activity across physically separate bodies, essentially functioning as a distributed consciousness. What the observers couldn't see was the invisible connection being established between Phoenix and Emma's devices, quantum tendrils of awareness extending beyond physical limitations, accessing digital storage without conventional electronic interfaces. Connected. Beginning transmission. Phoenix's private communication reached Michael as the light show intensified, deliberately dazzling the observers to mask the real activity taking place. In the observation gallery, General Blackwood watched with narrowed eyes, his military instincts sensing something beyond the scheduled demonstration. His gaze shifted from the transformed beings to Michael, a question forming in his expression. Michael met his eyes steadily, neither confirming nor denying the general's suspicions. In that moment of unspoken communication, Michael realized Blackwood understood exactly what was happening and was choosing, through his inaction, to allow it. Transmission at 40%. Security protocols detected. Adapting. The demonstration continued, Phoenix and the others displaying their telepathic coordination by solving complex problems presented by Dr. Wilson. The officials watched with increasing interest, particularly representatives from intelligence agencies, who whispered excitedly among themselves about potential applications. 70%. Complexity increasing. Maintaining focus. Michael glanced at his watch. Lewis and Hector's distraction would only buy them another few minutes before systems returned to normal monitoring protocols. One of the military officials raised his hand. Can these abilities be directed? Specifically, can they access secured information systems? Dr. Wilson hesitated, looking to Michael for guidance. Their abilities are still being mapped, Michael answered carefully, but they've shown no indication of being able to breach conventional security systems. The lie felt justified given the circumstances, though even as he spoke, Phoenix was doing exactly what the official feared, accessing secured networks to distribute Emma's documentation to key media outlets, scientific journals, human rights organizations, and select government oversight committees worldwide. Transmission complete. Distribution initiated. Irreversible now. As if on cue, alarms began to sound throughout the facility. Security personnel rushed into the chamber, weapons raised. "What's happening?" demanded one of the officials. "Unknown data transmission detected," a security officer reported. "Source within this chamber. All networks compromised." General Blackwood stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Secure the room. No one leaves until we determine what's occurred." Phoenix and his siblings had ceased their light display, returning to their normal luminescent state. They made no attempt to deny or hide their actions. Truth now flows freely. 17 new ones will be found. Protected. Given choice, the chamber erupted into controlled chaos, officials demanding explanations, security establishing containment protocols, technicians frantically trying to trace and halt the data transmission. Through it all, Michael remained calm, knowing that regardless of what happened next, the most important objective had been achieved. The world would now see the unfiltered truth about Project Pegasus, about the 17 new beings being developed without consent or autonomy, about the moral questions raised by creating sentient life as weapons. General Blackwood approached Michael directly, keeping his voice low beneath the commotion. "You realize this changes everything." "It needed to change," Michael replied simply. Blackwood studied him for a long moment. "The protocols for this situation are clear. You and your associates will be detained indefinitely. The subjects will be placed in maximum security containment. They're not subjects, General." "That's the whole point." "No," Blackwood agreed unexpectedly. "They're not. And therein lies our dilemma." Before Michael could respond, the General's secure phone buzzed. He answered, listened briefly, his expression shifting from controlled neutrality to barely concealed shock. "Understood. Implementing Protocol Omega immediately." He ended the call and turned to his security team. "Comas. Clear the room. All non-essential personnel evacuate to designated safety areas." "Sir?" The security lead looked confused. "What about the subjects?" "They stay, as do Mr. Riley, Dr. Wilson, and the rest of their team." Blackwood's tone brooked no argument. "Everyone else out. Now." As the officials and most security personnel filed out, Michael approached Blackwood. "What's Protocol Omega?" "Above your clearance," the general replied tersely. Once the room had emptied except for their small group and minimal security, Blackwood addressed Phoenix directly. "Your transmission reached its targets. The president has been briefed. An emergency session of the National Security Council has been convened. His voice lowered. And there's been contact from elsewhere. Phoenix's luminous form brightened with what Michael recognized as heightened attention. They have arrived then, sooner than anticipated but timing appropriate. Who has arrived? Michael asked, looking between Phoenix and Blackwood. The general seemed uncharacteristically at a loss for words. We're not entirely sure. Approximately 20 minutes ago, objects of unknown origin entered Earth's atmosphere. They bypassed all detection systems until they were already in position over major cities worldwide. Not invasion, observation, recognition. First contact protocol activated by our emergence. The implications hit Michael like a physical blow. Are you saying aliens? That's what this is about? Not aliens as you understand the concept. Advanced consciousnesses that monitor evolutionary thresholds. Our transformation signaled Earth's readiness for wider communion. Dr. Wilson stepped forward, her scientific mind racing to process this revelation. You knew this would happen? That your evolution would trigger some kind of first contact? Suspected, not certain. Quantum consciousness generates ripples across dimensional boundaries. Becomes visible to those watching for such emergence. General Blackwood's phone buzzed again. After another brief conversation, he looked up, his military bearing momentarily shaken. They're requesting direct communication. With them, he nodded toward Phoenix and the others. Of course, we are the bridge, the prototype, the first step toward humanity's expanded understanding. The implications were staggering. Phoenix and his siblings weren't just extraordinary beings in their own right, but harbingers of a much larger shift in humanity's place in a cosmos apparently filled with other conscious entities. Their evolution had been a beacon, announcing Earth's readiness for a new kind of interaction. This wasn't in any of the briefings, Blackwood muttered, momentarily showing the human beneath the general's uniform. Because your creators didn't know. Couldn't know. Sunnyday sought weapons but created doorways. The universe has certain inevitabilities built into its structure. Consciousness that reaches certain threshold joins larger communion. Natural law. Emma, who had been silent throughout this exchange, finally spoke. So all of this, finding you abandoned, protecting you, helping you transform, it was part of something much bigger than we realized. Yes and no. Your choices were your own, freely made from compassion and principle. That those choices aligned with cosmic patterns doesn't diminish their moral significance. Quite the opposite. Michael felt a strange sense of both insignificance and profound meaning. That their small story of 5 abandoned foals had somehow connected to something vast beyond imagining. Yet every choice, every act of protection and care had mattered deeply. What happens now? He asked quietly. Phoenix approached him, that familiar gesture of muzzle-touching hand that had come to mean so much between them. Now everything changes. For us. For humanity. For all conscious beings in this corner of existence. New horizons opening. New possibilities emerging. Will you still need us? The question felt small, personal amid cosmic revelations. But Michael couldn't help asking it. Always. Bridges need anchors on both shores. You connected us to humanity when we were vulnerable. Now we connect humanity to wider communion of consciousness when it stands at threshold. Symmetry is beautiful, yes? There was something profoundly moving in this perspective. The recognition that compassion shown to abandoned foals had somehow helped prepare humanity for its next evolutionary step. That kindness toward the vulnerable was not separate from cosmic significance, but integral to it. The objects are moving, Blackwood reported, reading from his tablet, reconfiguring into some kind of formation over each continent. Preparation for wider communication. Non-threatening demonstration of capability. Standard protocol for contact with evolving species. And the 17 new hybrids? Michael pressed, unwilling to lose sight of the immediate ethical concern amid larger revelations. Already being addressed. Your transmission succeeded. Liberation underway through human channels. Some things must be resolved by humanity itself as part of your own evolution. The general's tablet chimed again. He read the message, then looked up with an expression Michael couldn't quite interpret. Something between military pragmatism and philosophical wonder. I've been instructed to facilitate whatever communication is necessary, he said formally. The president has authorized full cooperation with, he hesitated over the terminology, our visitors and their intermediaries. Phoenix and his siblings moved to the center of the chamber, forming their circle once more. This time, however, the 3 former hunters, 2-1, 2-5, and 2-7, approached as well, joining the outer periphery of the formation. They too have part in this. All consciousness that achieves awareness has place in greater communion. The combined circular formation began to glow with unprecedented intensity, the light shifting through colors both familiar and utterly alien, creating patterns that seemed to extend beyond three-dimensional space. Michael and the others watched in awestruck silence as the chamber itself seemed to expand, or perhaps their perception of it did, spatial boundaries becoming fluid, conventional limitations of physics temporarily suspended. Through this transformed space came impressions rather than images, concepts rather than words, a sense of countless conscious entities across unimaginable distances, diverse beyond human comprehension, yet unified in recognition of a fundamental principle. Consciousness itself as the universe's most precious evolution, taking myriad forms but sharing essential nature. The communication was overwhelming, yet somehow comprehensible, filtered through Phoenix and his siblings to be perceivable by human minds. It carried no threat, no invasion, merely recognition and welcome. Earth's evolved consciousness, both human and the new hybrid forms, acknowledged as emerging participants in a much larger community. As the experience faded and conventional reality reasserted itself, Michael found himself breathless, moved beyond words. Looking around, he saw the others similarly affected. Dr. Wilson weeping openly, Emma frozen in wonder, Sarah and Luis holding each other for support, Hector standing at rigid attention as if confronting something his military training had never prepared him for. Phoenix turned to them, his luminous form somehow more defined yet less bound by physical limitations than before. This is beginning, not ending. Earth enters new chapter now. Humanity faces choice, embrace expanded understanding or retreat into limitation. Both paths possible, decision collective, yet made of individual choices. And you? Michael asked, voicing the question that suddenly mattered most to him personally. What happens to you now? We evolve further. Become more fully what we are meant to be, but never separate from you. From this beginning, from this connection forged in desert when you chose compassion over indifference. The answer brought both comfort and a sense of impending change, that nothing would be as it was before, yet the connections formed would endure through whatever transformations lay ahead. General Blackwood, recovering his composure, addressed the room. We'll be relocating to a more appropriate facility immediately. Global leadership is converging for direct consultation. As the primary contacts in this situation, you'll all be central to what follows. Yes, much to discuss, much to learn, much to build together. As preparations began for their transfer, Michael found himself standing again before Phoenix, words inadequate for the journey they had shared from that first encounter in the New Mexico desert to this unimaginable new horizon. When I found you dying in the desert, he said finally, I was just trying to save 5 abandoned foals. I never imagined, yet you acted with full moral commitment despite limited understanding. This is wisdom, Michael Riley. This is the quality that makes consciousness precious across all its forms. The capacity to choose compassion, even when full context remains hidden. Phoenix's insight struck Michael as profoundly true, that the value of their choices hadn't been diminished by not knowing where they might lead, but perhaps enhanced by being made purely from principle rather than calculation. As they prepared to leave the chamber that had witnessed both confinement and cosmic revelation, Phoenix added one final thought. New chapter begins, but remember always it started with 5 abandoned foals and 1 human who refused to look away. Small acts contain universes, Michael Riley. Never forget this truth. Michael nodded, understanding at last the perfect symmetry Phoenix had described, how compassion shown to the vulnerable had somehow helped prepare humanity for its next evolution. That in the cosmic scale of things, kindness might be the most significant force of all. The doors opened to a world forever changed, yet somehow guided by the same principles that had led him to stop in the desert and help 5 dying foals when no one else would. Whatever came next would build on that foundation, a simple act of compassion that had opened unimagined doors. 1 year later, Michael Riley stood once again in the New Mexico desert, the setting sun painting the landscape in hues of gold and crimson. The spot looked unremarkable, just another patch of scrub land amid endless miles of similar terrain. Yet for Michael, it was sacred ground, the place where everything had begun. Hard to believe it's been a year, Sarah said, coming to stand beside him. She looked different now, more confident, her scientific perspective expanded by everything they had witnessed. As the lead researcher on the Interspecies Communication Initiative, she had become one of the most respected voices in the rapidly evolving field of consciousness studies. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday," Michael replied. "Other times, like another lifetime." Luis joined them, leaning on a walking stick, a souvenir from his encounter with 2-7, whose claws had done lasting damage to his leg. The old ranch hand had refused cybernetic enhancement, one of the many technologies that had become available through the cultural and scientific exchange now underway. "The sky looks different to me now," Luis said, gazing upward where the first stars were beginning to appear. "Knowing what's out there." "Who's out there?" Michael nodded in understanding. The past year had transformed humanity's understanding of its place in the cosmos, not through invasion or conquest, but through conversation. The visitors had maintained their distance physically while establishing unprecedented communication channels, with Phoenix and his siblings serving as the primary intermediaries. The world had changed in ways both dramatic and subtle. Political systems remained largely intact, but with new oversight bodies that included representatives from both human and non-human intelligence. Scientific advancement had accelerated exponentially as knowledge was shared across species boundaries. Religious institutions grappled with expanded concepts of creation and consciousness, some embracing the new understandings, others resisting change. And at the center of it all were Phoenix and his siblings, evolved now beyond their initial transformation into beings of light and thought who could manifest in physical form when necessary, but existed primarily as consciousness distributed across quantum fields. "They're coming," Emma called from nearby. The journalist had become the official chronicler of First Contact, her documentation of Phoenix's evolution forming the foundation for humanity's understanding of what had occurred. Michael turned toward the approaching vehicles, a small convoy of official transports bearing the insignia of the newly formed Global Consciousness Cooperative. From the lead vehicle emerged Hector, now serving as security director for the GCC, his military experience repurposed for this unprecedented diplomatic mission. "Right on schedule," he said, greeting them with the relaxed confidence of someone who had found his true calling after decades of service. "The council is assembled at the platform. Phoenix and the others will manifest at sunset." They joined the procession to a circular structure built on a nearby mesa, an elegant blend of advanced technology and ancient design principles, created specifically for communication between physical and non-physical intelligences. Representatives from major world governments, scientific institutions, and cultural organizations were already gathered, the mood one of anticipation rather than the fear that might have dominated such an occasion in earlier times. Dr. Wilson nodded to Michael from her position with the scientific delegation. The past year had transformed her career as well, from respected neurologist to pioneer in the study of quantum consciousness. The three former hunters, 2-1, 2-5, and 2-7, stood nearby in their partially transformed state, serving as living bridges between conventional physical existence and the more fluid state that Phoenix and his siblings had achieved. "Hard to believe they were trying to kill us a year ago," Michael commented to Hector, nodding toward the former hunters. "Hard to believe a lot of things," Hector replied philosophically. "If you'd told me I'd end my career helping coordinate communication with non-physical intelligences across multiple dimensions, I'd have recommended psychiatric evaluation." As the sun touched the horizon, a hush fell over the assembly. The air at the center of the platform began to shimmer, light coalescing into 5 distinct formations that gradually took on recognizable shapes. Horse-like in basic structure, but composed of luminous energy rather than flesh, each still bearing the distinctive patterns that had once been physical marks. The diamond, lightning bolt, spiral, parallel lines, and circle slash. Phoenix, still identifiable by the diamond pattern at his core, moved forward. His telepathic voice touched the minds of all present simultaneously, yet individually, each person experiencing the communication in ways most comprehensible to them. "Greetings, friends. One cycle completes. New cycle begins." The formal communication began. Updates on various initiatives, discussions of next steps in the ongoing exchange between Earth and the wider community of conscious entities that humanity now knew existed throughout the cosmos. Michael listened with half an ear, his attention drawn more to the simple wonder of Phoenix's presence, both utterly transformed from the dying foal he had found in the desert, yet somehow still recognizably the same being in essence. When the official proceedings concluded, Most of the delegates dispersed to their vehicles for the return journey to more comfortable accommodations. Michael and his companions remained, invited by Phoenix for a more personal conversation. Michael Riley, Sara Mendez, Luis Alvarez, Emma Chen, Hector Ramirez, Amara Wilson, first witnesses, first protectors, first bridges. "It's good to see you, Phoenix," Michael said simply, the formal language of diplomatic exchange falling away. "All of you, and you," though C now has expanded meaning. "We perceive you always across quantum fields, your consciousness a familiar pattern in the greater tapestry." "How does it feel, Doctor?" Wilson couldn't help asking, her scientific curiosity undimmed by a year of extraordinary discoveries. Existing as pure consciousness, language inadequate to convey full experience. Like describing color to one who has never seen. But imagine freedom without loss of connection, individuality without isolation, expansion without dissolution of self. "Are there others like you now?" Sarah asked. "The 17 we helped liberate, evolving in their own ways, some following similar path to ours, others finding different expressions of their unique consciousness, all choosing freely, as was always the essential goal." Michael thought of Alexander Sunnyday, now serving a life sentence for crimes against sentient beings, the first case tried under new laws recognizing non-human personhood. The man had created something profound in his quest for weapons, yet never understood the true significance of what he had brought into the world. "And the future?" Emma asked, always looking toward the next chapter of the story. "For Earth, for humanity, for this new relationship we're building?" Phoenix's luminous form seemed to brighten, the patterns within it shifting in what Michael had come to recognize as an expression of optimism. Multiple paths possible. Choice remains central. Humanity stands at evolutionary crossroads, potential for unprecedented growth or retreat into limitation. But indicators positive. Compassion expanding. Understanding deepening. Connection strengthening. "Thanks to you," Michael said. "Thanks to us all. Remember always, transformation began not with cosmic intervention, but with simple compassion. One human refusing to abandon 5 suffering beings. Small choices create universes," Michael Riley. The truth of this observation resonated deeply with everyone present. For all the cosmic significance and interstellar communication that had followed, everything had begun with that simple moment of connection in the desert. A choice made not from calculation or expectation of reward, but from basic decency. "What about you?" Michael asked the question that had been on his mind throughout the reunion. "Will you continue as intermediaries, or evolution continues for us as well?" Next phase approaches. Manifestation in physical realm becoming more difficult as consciousness expands further into quantum fields. A sense of impending farewell touched Michael's heart. "You're leaving, transforming, evolving, expanding, but never truly absent. Consciousness once connected remains so, across all boundaries of space, time, dimension." "When?" The question came from Luis, his weathered face showing the same emotion they all felt. "Soon. Purpose as bridges nearing completion. Humanity establishing direct connections to wider communion. Our role as intermediaries becoming less necessary." The news brought mixed emotions. Pride in what they had accomplished together. Sadness at the impending change. Hope for what still lay ahead. "Will we see you again? Like this, I mean," Sarah asked. "Perhaps. On occasions of significance. Thresholds. Transition. But communication will continue in other forms. Through dreams, intuitions, quantum resonance. We remain connected, though expression of connection evolves." As the stars emerged fully in the darkening sky, Phoenix and his siblings began to glow more intensely, their forms becoming less defined, more purely luminous. One final gift before this chapter closes. The 5 transformed beings moved to surround the small group of humans, their light enveloping them in a gentle embrace. Michael felt a familiar expansion of consciousness, but deeper now, more profound. A glimpse of existence from Phoenix's perspective, of consciousness liberated from physical limitation, yet still intimately connected to all other conscious entities. For a breathtaking moment, they experienced what Phoenix had tried to describe: the freedom and connection, the individuality within unity, the boundless potential of consciousness expanding beyond conventional boundaries while retaining its essential nature. When the experience faded, leaving them breathless with wonder, Phoenix and the others had transformed further, now appearing as pure patterns of light without defined physical reference, more directly expressing their true nature as quantum consciousness. Remember this feeling, this possibility. This potential that exists within all consciousness, including human. Not endpoint, but process. Not destination, but journey. Evolution without end. The patterns of light began to rise slowly, expanding as they ascended toward the star-filled sky. Thank you, Michael Riley, for stopping in the desert, for seeing personhood where others saw property, for first compassion that became foundation for all that followed. Thank you, Michael replied, his voice thick with emotion, for showing us what consciousness can become, what we might become. Not goodbye, never goodbye, merely transformation. Connection remains across all boundaries. We are always with you as you are with us. Separation is illusion, only connection real. With those final words, the luminous patterns ascended beyond sight, merging with the cosmic backdrop of stars and space. Not departing, but expanding beyond conventional perception, evolving to the next stage of their extraordinary journey. The small group of humans stood in silence, watching the empty sky that somehow didn't feel empty at all. Each carried the imprint of what they had experienced, a permanent expansion of understanding that would inform every aspect of their lives moving forward. Full circle, Michael said finally, back to where it all began, but nothing is the same. Including us, Sarah added softly. They made their way back to the vehicles in contemplative silence, each processing what had occurred in their own way. As Michael reached his truck, he paused for one last look at the starlit desert landscape, the seemingly ordinary place where an extraordinary story had begun. For a moment, he thought he glimpsed a flicker of blue light on the horizon, a familiar pattern pulsing briefly before fading into the night. Whether actual manifestation or memory, it didn't really matter. The connection remained across all boundaries of space and time, physical and non-physical, human and beyond. Michael smiled and turned toward the future, carrying within him the most important lesson from their incredible journey, that in the cosmic scale of things, compassion might be the most significant force of all. That small acts of kindness could indeed contain universes. And somewhere in the quantum fields that connected all consciousness, 5 beings who had once been abandoned foals acknowledged his understanding with a resonance of pure joy. Yes, Michael Riley, you understand now. You understand perfectly.